Welcome to the Red Oktober AK podcast, where I, Three-Gun Kenzie, will be interviewing competitive shooters, hunters, fishermen, archers, entrepreneurs, and outdoorsmen. Come learn with me as I interview people from all walks of life, in different disciplines, all across the world, from novices to professionals of all ages. No matter what, everyone has something they can teach you, so come join me on the journey. Welcome back to the Red Oktober AK podcast. So I'm here with Brian Nelson. He's a match director for Red Oktober, if you shot that AK match. And then he's also on the Terran Tactical Pro team member, which is really cool. He shot 2 gun nationals where finally got to meet him this year. So Brian, thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited because I'm going to learn as much about you as probably a lot of people are going to. So it's interesting. So I want to know, how long have you actually been in this world of competitive shooting?
So in all of it, the first actual competitive shooting match I participated in was in it was November of 2007. So yeah, I guess it's been about 14 years in total.
Wow.
I was 10 years old, so been doing it for 14 years and 24 years old now.
Beard.
That was the first time I started doing it.
The beard, though. You're look like you're 10 years older than that.
Oh, well, if I cut it off, I look like I'm 10 again. Legitimately, there's no difference.
I didn't know your age. There we go. Let's start there.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's where it started. And actually, the first thing I shot was an IDPA match in Las Vegas. I live in southern Utah, so it's about a 2-hour drive to Las Vegas. I saw it on a shooting TV show because I've been into guns and shooting my whole life, but I saw it on it was either Shooting USA or Shooting Gallery, one of the Outdoor Channel cable TV shows, because it was 2007. There wasn't a lot of social media gun content because I don't even think my dad has social media. But saw that and grabbed my dad and said, "Hey, this looks cool. Let's do this." And so a couple of weeks later, we were in Las Vegas with this, sharing a Glock 34 and a fishing vest shooting IDPA.
Y'all shared that. That's really cool. You shared a gun and a vest. Made it happen.
Yep.
Wow. So does he still shoot with you from time to time?
So actually, yeah, very, very rarely. He just shot for the first time in a few years at a USPSA match last weekend. So
you get him on pistol or PCC?
PCC. Partly because that's a little bit, he relies on what I have set up to use. And it was like, well, I could get you a belt set up, all this, or I can hand you a PCC and a mag pouch. But also because for work, we both work at the same company. He owns the company. I work there for Scoring Technologies, which is Practiscore. We provide that to the competitive shooting world. And that's actually the company logo there. I'm not a medic or an EMT, but people think that's what that patch means. But we work together, and part of what we do is a lot of working with the United States Marine Corps, and some of that involves training and being around their training. My dad also owned a firearms training company that I worked at called Tactical Performance Center for a long time, and it's still in operation. Sold that 2 years ago, and I still help with that part-time, actually. But anyway, he's done firearms training, but he hadn't really done much at all with rifles, and that's the only thing that we're using for this Marine Corps program. So, hey, you're going to be around these Marines and shooting rifles more. You should probably shoot a rifle just a little bit more. So gave him a PCC, shot a USPSA match for the first time in probably 4 years. So, yeah, but we shoot together, and then we work together too. So we'll be going to North Carolina here, actually coming up next week for that same program. We'll be on Camp Lejeune.
That is so cool. I didn't know all of that. Man, having family, all these juniors or just kids growing up with their family coming to the shooting sports, I think it's the coolest thing in the world. I want that.
It's pretty, yeah.
So
it's good. It was, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
It was actually part of, I was homeschooled from pretty shortly after we started shooting together. And so that would be a big part of the homeschooling curriculum stuff for me was actually, I would be responsible for planning out travel and routes for driving to a match. And, that's how I learned how to do travel. I'd, call a hotel and make sure that, we drive, for example, we drive to Rock Castle, we drive from Utah to Kentucky, and it'd be my job to plan out the route and find places to stay on the way.
And he trusted you at what age?
That would have been, 13 or 14. Maybe a little bit earlier when we started doing that, but yeah. But it was trust but verify. But generally, I did a pretty good job.
Did you have to do like the budget or anything like that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Had to do that. So that's how I learned spreadsheeting. Was spreadsheeting out like this is what an AR build costs and stuff like that.
This is so cool. This is the best parenting I've ever heard, like in existence.
Well, I don't have a lot of examples to compare it to, but I think it worked pretty well for me.
Oh yeah, no, that's awesome. So when you're growing up and stuff, and even now, like what all shooting sports? Like I want the full gamut of what you've competed in now.
So early on, started in IDPA, which is actually surprisingly common, I think, for people to start in. It's then and now a very beginner-friendly shooting sport. In addition to very well marketed for beginners, because that's what my dad was interested in it too. He had a concealed carry permit and didn't really carry because he didn't trust himself to, because he didn't really know much about shooting.
Yeah.
We did that for a few years, but when we got serious about competitive shooting was when we're shooting an IDPA match in Las Vegas, and they're like, hey, it's really great that you guys come down to shoot with us, but doesn't St. George have a USPSA match going on this weekend? And we kind of went, huh? Well, don't know what that is, and didn't know there was a club in St. George, because especially then it was a lot smaller. Both the city of St. George and our area, it's grown a lot since then. And the shooting club is a lot smaller. So the only way that I think you could find out about a match was to be on the email list or stumble into it.
Okay.
Obviously this was before Practiscore and before Facebook really was a thing. And
yeah.
So, but we here's, they gave us the email for the club president at the time, Jim Mead, I think it was. My dad handled that emailing, so I can't remember, but the president of the club, and said, yeah, we'd love to have you guys come out and shoot a match. And then my dad was also kind of had health problems starting from about that time up to, kind of enduring. So he sometimes he'd have to miss out on, oh, I'm just not feeling good today, we can't go. So the first weekend we were supposed to go, we had and still have our matches on the first and third weekends of every month. That was the first weekend. And we said, okay, well, we'll just go on the third weekend of the month. The third weekend of the month, no one told us. There's no way to know. It was actually the club's annual 3-gun match. And we showed up with pistols. And this, by the way, this would have been 2008. This was a USPSA 3-gun match. So people might not know or remember, back then, 3-gun, if you said 3-gun versus multi-gun, 3-gun was a rifle stage and a pistol stage and a shotgun stage all combined together to make the tournament. So it was actually, that format was really easy for beginners, because we showed up and, I think my dad had a Glock 34. I had like a Springfield XD. And like, well, we don't have a rifle or a shotgun. Like, well, that's really easy. And they we shot Jim Mead's guns. Aww. And it was an Olympic Arms AR-15 A2, like fixed carry handle with a gooseneck mounted, I think it was a Seymour. And that, like, some people now go to a lot of work to clone that gun as like a Black Hawk Down, like, clone carbine. That was just what the gun was then. And a Remington 1100.
Oh, God. Okay.
An 1100 with the DMW Easy Loader. So if you don't know how an 1100 works, there's basically the shell lifter is also the bolt release. There's a little button at the back of it. So the DMW Easy Loader was a big extended thing. So anytime you push the bottom of the shell lifter up, the bolt would close. And it was I think it was an 1100. Like, I forget how the Remington grades work. It was a higher grade, like a Wingmaster or something. And the 870 Wingmaster is like the nicer one. So this one had, a walnut stock, 26-inch barrel, 10-round mag tube on it, and like it had a scroll work engraving on the ejection port, like with doves and stuff flying.
You can't picture
the only thing we're putting AR mags in our pockets, and using, and it was also 2007 or 2008 before the election. So it was also, even now, if you showed up randomly to a match and said, oh, I don't have ammo, someone would loan you ammo. But back then, the same thing happened. Shoot some 223, shoot some 12 gauge bird shot. The only thing we didn't have was shell caddies, back then dual loading and quad loading wasn't a thing. And honestly,
you do that 4-up thingy. I have to ask. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Oh, I don't know if there's a video function of the podcast. Otherwise, I would have brought a shotgun, and I still can load that way.
Oh no, we do video, but I feel like you can send me that later to post because that's really
sure,
cool.
Yeah, I mean it's that's another. We can talk about different things about 3-gun later that I kind of missed that because it was a little bit more, it required less work on the guns than quad loading and dual loading does.
Right.
But yeah, well, nobody even had those shell caddies there. And that's not because they weren't invented, I don't think. It's just my club had an annual 3-gun match. It's like, I don't think people put that much,
No.
It's like, oh yeah, annual 3-gun match. Like we were loading out bandoliers and belt loops anyway, my dad and I were not the only people loading out of pockets.
I believe it. Yeah.
So anyway, that was our first USPSA match, was a USPSA 3-gun match. And then we started shooting at the club there, kind of became more active, shot USPSA for the longest time. And then 3-gun was always fun, but it was never really something that we could do. The local club to us had an annual 3-gun match, so it's not like you can really, do a whole lot there. Shooting rifles at the time was also a little bit weird at our club. We had 50-yard bays, but the club, for legitimate reasons, was very controlling of who shot rifles on that range.
Yeah.
Because we were aimed at a giant ridge, but on the other side of that ridge is a subdivision.
Yeah.
And it's not really that we were, putting, we weren't launching 5.56 rounds into people's Cheerios and stuff, but it was, they wanted to avoid the issue because we're also, the range for our club is on a big shared county facility that had been and still is pretty good about letting us do what we want there, but the image of, oh yeah, you're shooting AR-15s and, so actually as you were shooting certain targets and certain things, they literally had these big corrugated pipe, like conduit things that you had to shoot through with the AR. And it wasn't for every target, I don't think. It was just like for anything that was on like the back bays, it was actually aiming that way. You had to shoot it through a pipe. Like you can't aim over the berm because of this pipe. This may have also been the reason why I don't think anybody really had compensators on their guns.
Oh yeah.
Because stick a 5.56 with a comp and that would have been like a 3-foot drain pipe or 2.5 foot drain pipe. Like that's not fun.
No.
So anyway, USPSA, and then did the pistol version of it. Always thought that 3-gun was fun, but it was, just easier to focus on shooting only a pistol. Yeah. And if you want to shoot 3-gun, our club had an annual match. Wasn't really great for practicing at that time. And we could shoot 3-gun in Las Vegas. There was a great club there that was run by a guy named Charlie Brown, who's still around shooting 3-gun. And that was taken over by Pete Rensing, who started UML and USSL.
Nice.
Then the thing was also back then, 3-gun, especially with paper scoring and trying to remember, I think they even used hit factor scoring for 3-gun. So like every target is Alpha Charlie, Charlie Delta, I think I could be wrong about that. This was a while ago. We'd legitimately show up there at like 7 a.m. and we would leave at 6 p.m. because we had to get home. We weren't done.
Yep. Oh yeah. No, I shoot 3-gun locally and it's an all day affair. Like the USPSA IDPJ is done at 2:00. No, we're there to like 7.
Yeah. So when we started shooting 3-gun as kind of the next thing or phase of things that we did, because we started Practiscore, and it started off as a tool for my dad, who volunteered to be the stats guy for our club, thinking that my mother, who's an accountant, would help him with it. And he brought home a stack of paper score sheets. And it's, stack of paper score sheets for stage 1. And it just says, "This is John."
Nothing else. No.
I'm like, oh, well, okay. Well, hell man, this is like a 30-person match, and there's 3 Johns here. And so which one is which? Well, we have to like process elimination. Okay, well, John Smith has a score sheet, and John Clark has a score sheet, so this must be John Johnson or whatever. The first time she looked at that, she's like, "Nah, I'm not going to help you with that."
Awesome, good for her.
So Practiscore was developed to kind of solve that on a club level, And when we started making it, like at first, it had to have a basic function to synchronize multiple phones or tablets together. And then we used it here just for local matches for a certain period of time. And eventually it grew to the point where we pushed it out to other clubs. And then it grew out to other sports like three gun. And USPSA clubs generally used it and were able to figure it out. And it wasn't really approved for higher level matches. But in the three gun world, as you know, there's not really much sanctioned governing body. So if a match director thinks that something's a good idea, they can just do it. Yeah. Which is both a good thing and a bad thing, right?
Yep. Three gun. I love it. And yeah, it's just loose. Yeah. Whatever.
Well, it is exactly what the match director wants. Some match directors for three gun will be more to the nth degree about everything than, USPSA or IPSC. And some of them are like, yeah, we use a stopwatch. It's close enough, at both the local and not really the major level, but, anyway, what happened was major three gun matches kind of like saw Practiscore, saw that it had time plus, and they wanted someone to help run the scoring. So my dad and I would just go and work stats at the match and set up, and we, you give us a four-wheeler or a golf cart, or we'll bring a four-wheeler and zip tie a router to it and drive around and sync tablets up, and here are your results. So I started shooting three gun as kind of and I just always wanted to go shooting, and we're doing three gun. Okay, cool. Well, figure out how to load a shotgun and make a shotgun work, make, zero rifle and stuff like that. And so that's kind of how I started shooting three gun. That became the primary focus, but as a part of shooting three gun, if you really want to do it well, you have to shoot a pistol very well. And especially that was when the idea that you could have optional pistol and shotgun targets came around. Also, kind of Three Gun Nation sort of started that. USPSA would do that at the multi-gun nationals every year for some targets, but like they'd have a stage where that was optional. And then Three Gun Nation started doing that. I think that's kind of became the norm. Certain matches would have a stage where it was very heavily pistol oriented, like Rocky Mountain Three Gun has always got some single gun stages in there, and one of them is a 60 round pistol stage up through a canyon. I don't know if you shot Rocky Mountain before, but
I haven't yet. I saw videos of like Dave Horn shooting it and Josh shooting it. I'm like, good Lord, where's that target 50 yards away? Probably with a pistol.
Oh yeah, no, legitimately, you're going through a canyon, and it's like, the briefing at the beginning would be Denise Johnson, the match director. Oh, we found another canyon for you to shoot in. And so we just put a bunch of pistol targets up in there, and there's like, 10-inch targets at 100 yards. And, it doesn't really matter that, people think about three gun scoring. That match, I think, has always been time plus. Oh yeah, just put 2 rounds on the cardboard and hit the steel. Well, yeah, but you got to hit the steel, and the steel is a 10-inch target 100 yards away. Like, you need to have a good trigger pull. You need to be good at all these things. So, as a part of that, and to be able to compete locally, I was always shooting USPSA. And then sort of while we were doing that, at one point, I was about 14 to 16 years old. That was when we were kind of doing everything. So we'd shoot USPSA. That's when USPSA started allowing Practiscore to be used at bigger matches. My dad was elected as our club president in, I want to say 2011. And in addition to getting Practiscore approved for use at USPSA, we took on running, we ran our state USPSA championship. I helped RO that. The USPSA Area 1 championship, we ran that for 2 years here. And then we ran 2 or 3 USPSA nationals here in St. George at the Southern Utah Practical Shooters. And back then, they would also have a local match director for the nationals. So it wasn't just, Mike Foley or Jake Martins or, I guess Shannon Smith was always match director at Universal. But so, yeah, for 1 or 2 years, Ken Nelson, my dad, was the match director for nationals, and I helped build all of those matches. We also started shooting cowboy action as a friend of ours sort of loaned us guns and helped us load ammo for us, and we'd shoot cowboy action. We launched a scoring application for that. That was, for a while, it was a standalone application. We decided to kind of try to make that paid. Practiscore has always been free, and Practiscore always will be free for match directors and club directors because it's something that we think needs to happen. In that case, we sort of decided to try a use case where the end user would pay for a scoring application for that Cowboy Action scoring app. And we travel around to sort of promote that. We do scoring for various Cowboy matches. And so we shot that as well. So at one point, we were shooting 3-gun, USPSA, and Cowboy Action.
I have to know what your alias was.
So back then, it was Molasses Kid.
Now it's not. You're not.
So, no, well, it was always a joke then, because I think when I started doing that, I was an A or masterclass USPSA shooter. And I would always have, like in our local club matches, I would have the fastest or one of the faster raw times. We have a couple of pretty good Cowboy shooters here too. Yeah. But I would have like 2 misses that were 5 seconds. And it's Cowboy Action. It's all, Virginia count. So it's all, you get 5 rounds in a revolver. You don't get to reload it, and you wouldn't want to if you could. So, and that game's more heavy on like, no, you got 10 rounds in the revolvers combined. So from one spot, here's a way that you can expend 10 rounds in the correct sequence or sweep. It's like, you've got to shoot 1 round on target 1 and 2 rounds on target 3, and then 2 rounds on target 2, and then 1 round on target 5. Like, have you shot with Matt Black before? The kid that's like 20. Yeah. Matt Black is Dylan Holsey is his name. Yeah, I have. I shot with him a few times. Yeah. I used to shoot Cowboy Action, so I did do that for 2 years. Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah. So so what was your alias? I'm Maverick Fitzpatrick. I made it rhyme with my last name. That works. Yeah, that was a lot of fun though. I very well could have shot with you in Cowboy Action and would have no idea, because there's people I still don't know their actual name. No, that's 100% true. There's even like cowboys that add me on Facebook. They use their aliases as their Facebook name. Like, this doesn't help. Like, yes. Well, I mean, unless you just run into a public and like, oh, hey, alias. And that's awesome. So then did you find your way into like Steel Challenge or like, AK? Yeah, Steel Challenge. Sorry, what's that? I was gonna say, and then AK matches, I don't even know when they started those, Well, I know exactly when they started, because I did it. I ran the first major one, I guess. So yeah, Steel Challenge I did. We never really did it at our club much. We did run, I had shot Steel Challenge matches. There was one in Vegas. We decided to go down and shoot really as a, like, hey, let's see what this is about. I knew what Steel Challenge was from seeing it on, again, Shooting USA, or Shooting Gallery, especially in 2000. Like, when I started shooting, Steel Challenge was also different. It was different ownership. I think USPSA bought it in 2009, but when I started, it was still in Piru, California. It was Mike Dalton and another Mike whose last name escapes me. But I think the 2007 Steel Challenge, I didn't shoot it, but I've read about it. I think that still was the most money in cash and product value that has ever been given away for a practical shooting match, was the 2007 Steel Challenge prize table. Like, it was a big deal back then. Checks and, early 2000s, back in the 90s, like, our stuff was on ESPN. It's true. True. But anyway, yeah. I shot Steel Challenge. We had the Steel Challenge after USPSA bought it here in St. George, like the World Speed Shooting Championship, which was not well attended that year. When they moved it out of California, I think there were like 70 shooters that year. It was not. Wow. Yeah, small. It was small. USPSA was still finding their way on what to do with Steel Challenge. They've done a great job with it now, I think. And a lot of that, I think, was due to Zach Jones being appointed as I don't know how he ended up as basically the coordinator for Steel Challenge, but seems to have done a very good job with it. But yeah, the year I shot the World Speed Shooting Championship, for context, I was on the Super Squad. And at that point, I was a GM pistol shooter. I had not seen all 8 of the stages before. Really? So you literally not shot all 8 of them, because like a local Steel Challenge match, usually they'd shoot 6 of them. Yeah. Because if you're running that's the other thing that blows my mind, is if you're running a local Steel Challenge match, you would think it'd go quick, right? No. It's like, oh yeah, it's all static plates with no reset. Oh no. You still got to paint the plates after every shooter. And like, I think it took longer than a local USPSA match when I shot it all 8 stages in the first time I shot all 8 of them in a local. So I'm on the Super Squad. I've never shot all 8 of the stages. And I'm legitimately like asking Max Michel, like, hey man, this is gonna sound dumb, but how do you shoot this one? Like, It's just like, yeah, I'm sorry. I've never seen 5 to go. I don't know what or he's like, he kind of looks at me like,
what are you doing here?
Like, dude, I mean, and I'd known Max a little bit from teaching at the MGM Junior Shooter Camp, and being a student and then teaching at it. But he's like, "Oh yeah, shoot it like this." I'm like, "Okay, cool." It didn't go well. I do have a photo. I did actually that year though in limited division. I did win Outer Limits, which surprised even me. I'm like, really?
That's great. Okay. That's a hard ass stage. It was a little tiny plate back
that there. Was probably why. And it was like, oh yeah, okay. Anyway, yeah, I shot Steel Challenge, and then Steel Challenge is an interesting sport to me. We do have it, or have run it on Thursday nights here in St. George, although they just shut it down for the winter. It's because I think people have if you haven't done it a lot, I think people have kind of the wrong perspective on Steel Challenge. Because like in my day job, I work with a lot of military and law enforcement and do scoring for them. And I try to bring them into, we successfully brought them into competition. In fact, I shot a Steel Challenge match with a special operations unit in the middle of a class that I was I got to attend for scoring tech and actually be a student in this cool course. And on the weekend of it, we actually went, and basically everybody in the class went to a Steel Challenge match and shot it. And people think, oh, it's Steel Challenge. Well, it's a speed shooting competition, right? It's real fast, and smoke and hope sets the tone. People think that it's all smoke and hope, and it's not. But I actually say that Steel Challenge is the action shooting sport's closest equivalent to Bullseye, other than Bianchi Cup, which is literally Bullseye. Bigger with more time limit, or with less time limit. Yeah. Steel Challenge is like USPSA's equivalent of Bullseye, because to win or do well at Steel Challenge, not that it's the same shooting skills at all, but the concept is that Bullseye is not about who can shoot an X ring. It's about who can shoot the most X rings. Who can shoot the least 9s in Bullseye. Mm-hmm. Steel Challenge is about who can do a 0.7 draw and 0.3 target transitions for 4 strings. Yep. On every single stage. Including on Outer Limits, what's the far target? They're 35 yards.
They're far. I don't know the exact, but they are far. And and
it's an 18 by 24, but and then there's a lot of 10-inch and 12-inch plates to, 15 yards, stuff like that. The last plate on 5 to go. It's about executing processes exactly the way that you want them to, with no slop, no slack at all. Mm-hmm. And that's sight alignment to some extent. And it's, just the mechanics of drawing the gun.
So I've seen your videos that you've posted on Instagram and stuff, breaking down Steel Challenge, but for people listening that haven't seen those, how does someone master Steel Challenge? Can they dry fire at home, or what should they really be focused on in matches?
For Steel Challenge, I'm not necessarily the right person to ask. I've done a little bit with it, but, dry fire surrender starts. And another free thing that really will help, partly to reduce your times, but also just to reduce the chance of fouling up a draw, is adjusting your holster around your hands being here. Some sort of consistent index if you want to do forward or sides of ear pro, hat brim, whatever. Just set it up so that naturally your hands fall to your holster. Yep. And that means it's probably going to be a slightly different setup than whatever you have on your holster for shooting, USPSA, 3-gun, or if you just never adjust your holster at all.
I was one of those people.
Or you're like me, and it's adjust your holster. By the way, I'm using a Safariland 6390, law enforcement, duty hanger that it's for a 2-inch belt on a 1.5-inch belt. So you can adjust it by just wedging it, but it will come out of adjustment. So you're just constantly bending the thing. Mostly because I'm just too lazy to actually get a proper hanger for that thing, or I've also had issues with some of the. I'm very lucky in a lot of big picture things, and I'm very unlucky with small picture things. I'm lucky in that I have an awesome job where I get to do what I want. I get to shoot a lot. I live in a great place. But stuff that doesn't, another guy, a friend of mine, jokes that yes, I'll tell, oh yeah, I don't really care for that. It broke for me. He just at one point turns and says, Brian, you break hammers. Like, shut up. So holster hangers are one of those things for me. I had, I've never seen this with any other one of these products. So don't take this as a bash on this product, but I got the Safariland USPSA holster hanger kit. Mm-hmm. It's super modular and it fits the 3-hole pattern, which means it fits the Safariland QLS. And almost all my holsters are on QLS. Most of my holsters are retention holsters for 3-gun or for instructing and all sorts of different stuff. I snapped it. Just not even doing anything crazy. I think I went prone, started shooting a rifle, got up. Oh, my holster is on the ground and not on me because the aluminum arm just snapped. So I'm a little bit hesitant about stuff like that. But anyway, adjusting your holster is a big tip that will help you with Steel Challenge. And then this is a good way to train for anything. And Steel Challenge happens to align with, the literal process of Steel Challenge, which is on all the stages except for Outer Limits, you shoot 5 strings, they take your best 4. Mm-hmm. And on Outer Limits, shoot 4 strings, they take your best 3. If I'm remembering that correctly.
Yep.
So in dry fire and in a lot of the live fire practice that I do, I do not at all related to Steel Challenge. It's just a good process for making sure, backing up a little bit more big picture, there's practice and then there's training. Those two things aren't actually the same. Although we use those words interchangeably, I don't think of them as the same. Training is where I'm learning something new or learning how to do something faster than I've ever done it before, or trying to basically improve on speed. Practice is where I take something I already know how to do and can do well and make sure that I can actually execute that when the buzzer goes off. So if you want to train, that should probably be a lot more live fire because you get recoil, you get a record, you get to make sure that things actually work, and you get more accountability than you would just, ready, fire, aim, click. Oh, that was a good dry fire because my sights were aligned at the end. Yeah, but you pulled the trigger before the sights were aligned. When you're going at real high speeds, sometimes you get tripped up like that in dry fire. So the training is much more live fire. It's going to be slow when you're learning something new, or you're just pushing it really fast when you're trying to get faster. And then training is, no. I know I can do let's just say a modest draw. I can do a 1.5 second draw on an A zone at 10 yards, right? Cool. That's where we're at, right? I can do that consistently. So the training would be, if I know I can do that live fire, I will do that in dry fire and say, oh, well, I'm going to do nothing but a 1.5 second draws, and I have to do that 10 times in a row under 1.5 seconds, being honest and accountable to my sights and my grip at the end of the draw. If I don't do that 10 times in a row, if I mess up repetition number 10, we're back on repetition number 1.
Yeah, I've seen videos. That's legit.
Yeah, so that's dry fire, and I'll do that live fire. And so the key to doing that is, if you're going to do it dry fire, I'm somewhat generous in a part-time for dry fire unless it's something I actually have a lot of data on. Mm-hmm. So I know that from a race holster, yes, that's a 0.7 draw. I know that it's a 0.7 draw is repeatable, consistent for me. So yeah, I'll do a 0.7 draw to a 10-yard A zone, and I'll set that in dry fire. If I had no idea, I would just start off and okay, well, let's just start off with a part-time that seems achievable. Let's draw the gun in 1.5 seconds. Okay, that's way too long. Let's go down to 1.25. Okay, let's go to 1 second. Okay, it looks like 1 second is could I do this in 0.7? Probably, but 1 second seems to be what's consistent for me. I would rather make sure that I can do that consistently in practice and execute that in a match without failure and be able to pay attention to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Again, unless it's something you actually have a lot of experience and data, doing live fire.
Right. Yeah.
And then you do that same thing live fire, and now's when you're accountable for misses, right? So, or not. Sometimes, some things it's I'm going to allow myself to have 2 makeup shots on this run. That's not ever really the fastest way to do something, but some targets are literally. I don't think a lot of people realize, sometimes how poorly a factory gun with their ammo they're using can shoot, and they set if we're doing rifle work, for example, one of my regular instruction guns it's a very good high quality rifle, and with good ammo, it shoots great. It shoots for 30 rounds, it shoots about 3-inch groups at 100 yards. And with green tip, it shoots like 6 inches at 100 yards. So if I'm trying to make myself accountable 100% to a 4-inch target, you're not going to do it.
No.
Math is not on your side, right? You either need to allow some makeup shots and allow yourself to let that cone of fire fill in, which is a skill and you need to do, or make the target bigger where you can hit it every time. You just understand it. Yeah. You shoot an 8-inch plate with that gun at that distance, so anyway, that's some of the training. Anyway, long way around of talking to Steel Challenge. I apologize. I am guilty of getting very far off on another topic, but that kind of training will help you a lot for Steel Challenge. And I would essentially make it, the draw matters a lot. You need to A, hit the target with your first shot off the draw, and B, it needs to be fast. C, these are all high priorities. I'm not sure which one I would put at the front because they're all very important for Steel Challenge specifically. You still have to have a good grip. That matters less if you're shooting 100 grain Steel Challenge 9mm load. That's like 100 power factor. But it still does matter for your index on every other target on the stage. So do draws, do them like that. Set an aggressive par time, and then target transitions. As soon as you push a trigger and see a sight aligned on a target, moving your eyes, moving your gun to the next target.
Yeah, brilliant.
Those fundamental skills will help a lot, and then beyond that, this is something I haven't done. So this is just looking at other people I know who are good at Steel Challenge. What they've done is, and then shoot the Steel Challenge, like shoot matches or set up the stages and shoot the stages
over and over again. Yeah.
There are a few things in our sport where we get to literally, yep, this is the stage. Here it is. You need 5 plates to set it up, like in a box. I helped with the MGM junior camp a couple of years ago when BJ Norris ran it in Lewiston. And BJ's obviously one of the greatest Steel Challenge shooters that's ever been. And yeah, his little, it was a gravel pit there. There's sprigs in the ground. This is where, and they're different colors. Like each different color is a different stage. Just, set it up and just move around and shoot every stage from the Steel Challenge.
Love it.
Yep. Because at the high level, and I don't recommend this for everybody, but at the high level in Steel Challenge, the gun doesn't stop moving until it gets to the stop plate. Mm-hmm. So what you're looking at is a plate, and your sight alignment, whether that's a dot or irons. Steel Challenge doesn't even really matter much. It never stops on it. So it's just you're pulling the trigger here, bang, and then moving on to the next plate.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's wicked.
Yeah. Everybody gets to do that on Smoke and Hope. And it's kind of cool because it's something to learn. And another great way to learn that actually is something that helps a lot. It's a variation of something I learned from Patrick Kelly called the sweep drill. And you can look that up on YouTube. It's the sweep drill or something like that. If you search for that, it'll come up. It's something he did for learning how to shoot a shotgun at ground targets fast. Because with a shotgun, it's the same idea, except, in Steel Challenge, if we think about Smoke and Hope, we're shooting an 18-inch target.
Yeah.
In terms of width, like 18-inch wide, with a bullet that is always 9mm wide. Well, shotgun is reverse. We're shooting a 6-inch target, but it doesn't matter because I'm using sometimes an 18-inch bullet.
Yeah.
So I need to basically take and imagine an 18-inch circle around my target and keep the gun moving and pull the trigger without stopping it, and that's how you get speed with a shotgun. Otherwise, it's a very big, heavy recoiling, low ammo PCC. It's not very good at being a PCC.
It's true. Yeah.
Unless you shoot a old shotgun, then it's really good at being PCC because they also don't work.
But it's really fun. So when you move, like when shooters move up or try USPSA and stuff, now we're in the movement, section of shooting and all of that. So then what do they work on when it comes to like transitions there or footwork, or how is that, the step up to put it all together?
Yeah. So I like to say that all practical shooting, if it's done, I would say all practical shooting, this is one of the hallmarks of practical shooting, it is about marksmanship fundamentals. And that means all marksmanship fundamentals. So I would say grip, stance, recoil control, and shooting for speed fall into that. It's all about the execution of marksmanship fundamentals with interruptions in between. So those interruptions are varied in scale. Steel Challenge has very few interruptions, almost none, right? You have to move on outer limits and you have to draw the gun. You have to get the gun into action. We move to USPSA, now we have more interruptions. Those interruptions become reloads. Those interruptions become moving between positions. So what you're trying to do is minimize that interruption. What that means is there's a lot that can be gained just from efficiency in leaving and entering positions. So leaving a position, essentially, if you think of it as a target-to-target transition, so shooting at multiple targets, just like the Steel Challenge, as soon as I know that I have accomplished whatever that goal was on that target. So USPSA, mostly that's 2 shots per target, right?
Yeah.
And I've called, see my sights lift, single alpha. Next time the sights lift, single alpha. Calling a shot lets me know that I'm done with that.
Okay, real quick.
As soon as, yep.
When you're there, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand. Can you explain what calling your shots are? Not where you see it on paper,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. So calling a shot it's an incredibly important part of the fundamental process of firing a gun for performance, not just for speed. So essentially what most people talk about when they say calling a shot, that is knowing where the bullet landed through the use of the sights. So rather than what do you call prairie dogging or, okay, I have a USPSA target, I shoot it, bang, bang, and double tap or whatever. And then they stick their head up and look over the gun. Oh, there's an Alpha Charlie. Cool. And then we'll go. That's a way to call a shot is visually look at a bullet hole on a target. But it's not generally the way that we want to do things. Number one, the more shot up the target is, the more difficult this becomes. The smaller the bullet diameter is, the harder this becomes. So it's functionally, beyond like 10 yards. It's not a thing with rifles, with 5.56 rifles, small bullet holes. Easier with slugs. But so calling a shot essentially is watching the movement. So this is my front sight. I shoot the gun, front sight goes up, and if you're shooting me in the face, then you would know as soon as I fire the gun, the front sight lifts. You called the shot as a hit because you saw the sight lift from my face. You did not need to see any effect. You didn't need to see any impact on steel. You didn't need to see a bullet hole with paper. Or I know if I'm watching that same thumb, that same front sight, and as I pull the trigger, if I'm watching the sight, I see this and then it lifts. We know we have a miss because I saw my front sight lift from somewhere that is not the proper target. So that's the idea of calling a shot. It's important for shooting at multiple targets, but it's also something people overlook as a literal marksmanship fundamental because it tells us something very important. It doesn't just tell us what the bullet did or where the bullet landed. That's secondary. When you see the sights lift, that is your cue that the gun has fired. You're done.
Right.
So what that also lets us do is move into whatever post-shot thing we need to do. Sometimes that's moving the gun off the target. The one thing that always needs to happen post-shot on a semi-auto gun is we need to reset the trigger.
Yeah.
So it's one of the cues I use for people also is, hey, watch your front sight. As soon as you see the front sight lift, reset your trigger finger. And that avoids the tendency people have that's taught deliberately in some places. Some people just learn it naturally of, fire the gun, pin the trigger, bring the gun back, let the trigger out. Which is, of course, slow, but also causes people to miss because, no matter who you are, unless you've really, really specifically worked on this, okay, I'm looking at my gun and it's sighted in on a target. There are my sights. Okay, now I need to let the trigger out. Now I need to pull the trigger. Because you feel like you're rushed because you've been staring at a sight picture that's telling you, yep, you're good. For, a half a second, which is forever when you're looking at sights.
Yeah. So I'm glad you explained that. So many people miss the calling shots. And like, I know my friends at the higher level, they're literally finish a stage and, everybody be like, all right, what do you have on that stage? They're like, oh, I know I have 3 Charlies. I'm like, how the hell do you know?
Drop one there, drop one there, drop one there. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, okay, going back to putting it all together, but I interrupted you.
So putting it all together. So if we think about a target to target transition, this is important for anything that requires mobile target engagements in the competitive shooting environment where we know generally this is what a target takes to neutralize, right? So, I'm shooting 2 rounds on a target. Okay, I see sights lift, bang, sights lift, bang. I know as soon as this lifts, I'm done. So the next thing that happens is I need to look at the next thing I'm going to shoot. So this lifts, I look at my next target, and I start bringing this over here as the gun is recovering from recoil. That's a proper target-to-target transition. As soon as I see the proper sight line here, I start pulling the trigger. Doesn't mean you have to pull the trigger any faster. It's another thing I like to tell people to think about. Don't think about just pull the trigger now, start pulling the trigger. Eventually, depending on the gun, because obviously if you're shooting a double action only HK USP and 40, or like a Border Patrol gun, then you're going to have to pay a little bit more attention to that unless you're really, really good at shooting that gun. But the speed could be less. Just start the process when you see the sights aligned. Then the next highest level is when I think the sights are going to be aligned at the completion of the trigger pull, start pulling the trigger. Okay. That's the complete sequence for getting from one target and getting a hit on the next target. Think about movement in the same way. As soon as I know I'm done here, I'm going to look at and go to the next place. Just being efficient in knowing when to start to move from a position. Yeah, is what you see a lot of is people like, okay, shoot, bang, bang, back to sights. What now? Oh yeah, and then start moving.
Yeah.
And it goes even a little bit deeper than that. This is something that you need to figure out before the buzzer goes off, which is, it's kind of obvious once you've done it a little bit, but no, this is something that you need to do before the buzzer goes off. And it's something you figure out on a walkthrough. Any match you're going to go to, they're going to give you a 3, 4, or 5 minute walkthrough. And you're allowed to, in USPSA and IPSC, you're allowed to walk through and air gun the stages and point your thumb and stuff. And, oh yeah, I'm going to be here, pointing my gun here. The lean's going to be this. And then, there's different ways to control your momentum out of position. I can either start leaning, make my momentum already set up to go to the next target area, or my momentum's got to be, my weight has to be away from the target area, in which case I'm going to like drop step or something like that to get out of that position. That's what you figure out before the stage even happens, and then you sit there and visualize it. So you take things you already know what they look like, close your eyes. I reference, hey, I can see the top edge of my front sight with that little fiber optic in there. As soon as I see that lift the second time from that target, I'm going to pull my left leg out from under me, push off and run to that other spot over there. Or, I'm going to pull my left leg out from under me and I'm going to drop the magazine and start my reload.
Yeah. Now, what about what are you looking at when you look at no shoot targets and even like hard cover targets? I know a lot of people kind of struggle with those.
Yeah. I look at, for one, it just like a gun has a mechanical cone of fire, right? I talk about my rifle that shoots 6 inches with one ammo, 4 inches with another ammo. For one thing, if you look at a tight no shoot or a hard cover target, how much target area do you have and what can you actually hit? Like if I just say, hey, draw and shoot a controlled pair on a timer, can you hit an 8-inch target at a distance? Can you hit a 6-inch target? Like for some people, you're just going to hit hard cover or no shoot because you don't have the marksmanship fundamentals.
Yeah.
And that's like a surprising amount of people. And a lot of people, I think, kind of skate by, they'll have a miss over the shoulder or, they execute the thing they can do 1 out of 10 times. They happen to execute that task under the clock, which is awesome. So the first thing I back up from is have the mechanical, not mechanical, but the fundamental ability to do that target.
Yeah.
Then pick where you're going to aim. And your mechanical fundamental ability is going to inform where you have to aim. So, and it's a little bit balanced on power factor also.
Yeah.
If I'm shooting a target with hard cover and, what's the risk of me shooting a Charlie if I'm shooting major power factor open or
not
limited?
That bad, but minor. Yeah.
A point, I'm going to drop 2 points. Okay, whatever. Okay, I'm shooting minor. And by the way, that's still not what you want to do if you're, trying to win a match. But for most people below, I'd say 85%, if you typically finish 85% below, probably doesn't really matter that much. Once you get above that, then even with major power factor, it matters a lot more. I'm shooting 9 mil, shooting minor power factor. Every Charlie drops 2 points, so I have 4 points down. That changes the equation a little bit. So if you have the fundamental skill to do it, I'm going to pick the largest area where I have the most A zone around my aiming point. Now that could be real close to a no shoot, depending on how it's set up.
Speaking of the stack stuff, I feel like I tend to hit Charlies when it's that A zone because it's safe instead of really trying to get those points.
Yeah. Well, and then another part of it is, there's so much with USPSA that goes into it. And unfortunately, I've shot exactly 3 USPSA matches this year, just with other stuff that I've had going on. So I unfortunately, I wouldn't even feel comfortable teaching a competition class because I'm real rusty at it. It's in shooting, you get a little bit of the little sliver of A zone. Yeah, it's probably, backing it up, even beyond that. It also depends on what the high hit factor on the stage is. So I'm looking at a stage that has a high hit factor, like it's it's a lot of points divided by a short time, essentially. Well, then the points matter less, and what I can do to save time is going to be more important. So if I'm going to add a half second for every shot to make sure that it's an A on a 10 hit factor stage, and I'm going to give up a second to get 2 alphas, it's probably not worth it.
Right.
If I'm going to add a quarter second and it's a 4 hit factor stage, then it's worth it.
Right.
And in either scenario, the worst possible thing you could do is have a no shoot and or a mic.
Yeah.
So first, hit everything. Once you can hit everything, and that's it. I broke this down once. I should have written it down because the person I was talking to appreciated it. But the hierarchy of how to be good at USPSA or pick a shooting sport or pick shooting, like in general. Number one, your stuff has to work.
Yep.
Like your gun has to work 100% of the time.
Have you met me? Mine does not. None of mine.
No. I again, I'm lucky in big things, unlucky in small things.
Yeah. Okay, so get the gun that works, guys. Pro tip.
The gun has to work, and your whole system has to work. And by work, I mean not just function. Like you're not doing yourself any favors if you're going to try to shoot USPSA with a gun that shoots a 10-inch group at 20 yards.
Yep.
Because you're going to have to shoot a smaller target than that. And you're going to hit a no shoot, and it's not even going to be your fault. I mean, it is because you chose that gun, but you didn't fail. Your gun failed.
Don't you love it too? I have to say this when people are like, "Oh, well, you're in cheater division with PCC, so it doesn't count that you got this like win or whatever." It's like, "Oh, choose the right gun." Like open still beats me, so I'm in the wrong gun too. Just saying. And like Mills doesn't even choose the wrong gun. He plastics goes to second place. Like what? Yep. The right gun for you.
Thus proving to me that there should be no divisional separation whatsoever in USPSA.
What?
No, I'm just kidding.
You guys
I'm
are
just kidding about that.
I was like, revolver and open? No.
I mean, that's how it was for a while.
Wait,
I mean,
have you shot revolver?
No, I haven't shot. Well, I have, like for a stage. I don't think I shot a full match with it. And to be clear, I shot cowboy action, right? So I shot single action revolvers and lever action guns. I shot a steel challenge, or not. I shot an outlaw steel match with downloaded ammo in a Lee Enfield once.
Oh my gosh. I like it.
And and that was, I did that for fun because it looked cool. And I don't think revolver looks like it's fun in USPSA.
No, it really doesn't. Cowboy
I'm
action.
sorry. It's like, and then you look at the special stuff that goes into it. And it's also because I already have enough specialized tools for enough other, but so I need moon clips. Oh, I need moon clips that fit that brass. So that means I need to use that brass.
Right.
So that means I need to make sure I either use the same ammo every time, which I don't load as much ammo as I used to. But you mean I've got to be picky about brass, or I've got to find only federal ammo to use.
Yeah.
And only federal brass or whatever. And I have to use that. And I have to have a special freaking tool to get the brass out of the moon clip. And then I reload the moon clip. Like this doesn't look fun at all.
Yeah, that's
this
true.
Looks like, there's probably like 4 people very angry. There's probably like 4 people watching this very angry that I'm not at all correct in how revolver vision works. And I don't really care because, that roughly reflects revolver participation in USPSA. It's about 4 people. But I say that with nothing but love.
I love it.
It looks like cap and ball revolvers to me. I have 2 cap and ball revolvers. I've shot one of them. I won the other one.
You haven't done the horseback cap ball.
I have not done that. I've been on a horse twice. That was.
Oh, I really want to do that. That would be really cool. We've digressed. Cool. We've digressed. Where were we?
We were talking about steel challenge. No, we were talking about moving to USPSA.
Yeah.
So the hierarchy of things in USPSA first. First, your gun has to work.
Yep.
Right. No matter what you pick, your gun has to work and work for precision and for reliability. Number 2, hit all the targets. Once you can do those 2 things, I mean, like you can hit all the targets that are going to be put out there. You're fundamentally sound to hit all the targets at speed. Then we can work on making and executing a plan. And then I think after that comes movement specifically. Because there are things in terms of movement, technique-wise, knowing how to do a drop step, knowing how to manage your momentum that are very helpful.
Yeah.
And a good source of information for that is the book Smart Move, Kita Bussy or Bus. I know her, and I can't.
Busse. Sorry, Keita. I don't know.
I can't remember how to pronounce her last name, and I feel bad about it. But anyway, that's something to check out for moving into sport. She also does specific classes just on that. And if you go to a competition shooting class, it's probably going to touch on it from any one of the good competition shooters that offer them, whether that's Stoger, Max Michelle, JJ.
Yep.
They pick a GM that offers a class, and they're going to give you some good stuff for that. And those also translate very well into a lot of things in the shooting world. USPSA, I think, is if you can do USPSA well, and then translate the gun part of it, the movement part of it directly translates into shooting sports. Just period. You're going to really beat a lot of people in IDPA because understanding it. The movement's largely the same, although it's been a long time since I shot an IDPA match. The movement's largely the same, especially since they started using fault lines instead of subjective cover calls. The SOs used to basically look and say that's too much, and then they yell cover, and you have to move back and try again. Now they use fault lines, much less subjective, much more legitimate to decide who the best shooter is that day. The movement's going to be the same for IDPA to USPSA. It's going to be largely the same for 3-gun, and it brings in thinking about movement as a legitimate part of the stage. Because in 3-gun,
you have to be moving at all times.
I hesitate to say anything about, oh yes, this is the thing for 3-gun, because it's how much efficient footwork saved me at an Andy Horner match? This much.
0. You need to have accuracy at Andy Horner's scoring. Yeah.
Like Blue Ridge Mountain 3, it's no. That was all the best efficient footwork you could have was 2 makeup shots on a long range rifle target, because it's it's an 8-inch target at 500 yards, and your gun can't hit that. So you have to take 3 makeup shots for the cone of fire to fill in, stuff like that. Or
that's match specific. I feel like I've been to so many in different.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, Missouri, Minnesota. You look at Florida and Georgia. Every single match, okay, I need to be good at that. I need to be good at this.
Yeah.
And some, it's all of it. But
I ran a match out here earlier this year, February, called the Hard as Hell 2-gun, which was a series of matches we started here in St. George in 2012. We did a 3-gun match up till I think 2017, if I remember correctly. And we also ran, and that was a 3-gun match, rifle, pistol, shotgun.
Yep.
And then we ran a 2-gun for 2 years, 2017 and 2018. And then took a hiatus, and then I ran the Hard as Hell 2-gun again here in 2021.
You're the one that did all that in Texas, the Hard as Hell thing?
No. So that was actually another club. That was my friends at Killian's. And they ran, that was based on that. There was another one at Rock Castle called the Rock Hard 3-gun championship.
I remember that. Yep.
Those were all based around Hard as Hell, which was a match that we started here in 2012. Again, that was actually Pete Rensing and my dad and myself. I helped build the thing. I was the match director for Hard as Hell starting in 2015 until the last year. But that was and that's similar in a lot of ways to a match earlier than that called the MGM Ironman, which was in Parma, Idaho, hosted by MGM Targets. That's one where that match specifically being featured on the first season of 3-Gun Nation, I think that was what pulled a lot of people into 3-Gun also. 3-Gun Nation, a TV show on NBC Sports. The first 2 seasons of 3-Gun Nation, they're just going to different outlaw matches. And that was also 3-Gun Nation covered outlaw and USPSA 3-Gun back when it was really cool.
I know. I kind of
3-Gun's cool because of the shooting, but back then, that year at USPSA Multi-Gun Nationals, of all the places, you wouldn't think that now. Yeah, there's just straight up a scored target array with a stage gun that is a suppressed M240, like a 7.62 belt fed at USPSA Nationals.
So
it's
cool.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they don't do that.
That's not. You couldn't really see that at the 2-Gun Nationals this year was fun, but you couldn't really see that happening there. Oh yeah, here's a belt fed 308, and here's some scored targets. Can you imagine how much people would freak out if they
would lose their mind?
By the way, if you have a penalty with this belt fed, you've earned it.
You don't know how to operate. You never shot it. You don't know if it's zeroed. That's on you, bud. I
mean, and in fairness, stage guns caused controversy like that back in the day. And I put them in matches too. I put them in a match this year. I put them in Red Oktober. We had one.
People bitch about I got to shoot an MP5. I got to shoot an actual machine gun I don't even remember, M42 or something, and
MG42, like a
yes, big old. And like, okay, so
yeah.
I shot that machine gun and I shot the stage of my life. And I think it was because I was so excited and happy that when I got up there, went 1 for 1 on long range, then jumped off the Jeep and took off. And I was like, that was the most fun I've ever had. Set the tone.
Some, I've gotten to the, because it was something that was always controversial that people would do. I've done it as a match director. I did it this year, like, because I really want to have a conversation with someone who's like one of the stage guns we had for Red Oktober. Well, the only one we ended up actually using was an M72, or I'm sorry, an M79, which is a break action 40 millimeter grenade launcher from Vietnam. It's like, if you've seen, I think it was Apocalypse Now, they used it. But it's just a cool gun. It's like, yeah, it's a break open, like looks like a weird, double barreled shotgun, except it's just one big 40 millimeter barrel. And I just want to have a conversation with someone who's like, I don't think it's fun to shoot a 40 millimeter grenade launcher. And I just want to look them in the eye and say, I don't care.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It rocks. Like, you're not a function, like, you're not a real human being. I don't know. I understand that there's certain things that aren't fair. And I've had to pull stage guns from matches because something went wrong. And it's like, oh, yeah, the zero on this gun is not on anymore. And it's, you're trying to have it shoot 8 yards and the gun got bumped and something changed. Like, that's not fun. But the idea that we're not going to take anything out of it, again, practical shooting is about the execution of marksmanship with interruptions in the way.
Yeah, I like that.
Like shooting a grenade launcher in a stage. That's an interruption. Fine. Maybe it's for score, maybe it's not. It should be something that's fair. It should be something that we could expect people to do. Like, I don't expect people to constantly, reload an AK if they're a left-handed person in the middle of a 3-gun match. Like, that's not cool.
Yeah.
And even that, I think, like, the right audience and the right type of match, that would work. But anyway, back then, the MGM Ironman was one of those matches where people see, like, that match. That was, I think, the first time I shot an MP5 was that match. It was a stage gun. And then, you go through like a whole trench complex. I think that year it was pistol in this trench, and like you leave it there, you pick up a 90-pound dummy and carry it. It was like 400 yards. I mean, it was a ways downhill, fortunately.
Lucky. Yeah, I've done uphill in 27 degrees, but 200-pound dummy.
Yeah. But you take it off, you put it down, and then you pick up an MP5, and you've got to shoot a plate rack. And I think the rule, I don't know how that worked, but you shoot a plate rack, and every extra round you have, they give you like 20 rounds, because back then 20 rounds of 9mm was like, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's like stage gun. Yeah, here's like 2 bullets.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Sorry.
Good luck. Yeah. Curve the bullet.
So you shoot a plate rack, flip it to auto, and then shoot a USPSA target. Ooh. And anything that was in the A zone on full auto was like a 2-second bonus or something.
I love that. I love that a lot. It's cool. Because you can see control the full auto level. I don't know.
Exactly. It's just one of those, like, but also, I think there might have been a bonus if you dumped it all on auto, but I can't remember. That may be wishful thinking, because I would do that. Like, there's a 2-second bonus for everything in A zone. By the way, there's another 5-second bonus if you do it in one 12-round burst, or 8. That would have been a 14-round burst. Like,
right.
It's 55. You could do it, especially like, just lean into it a little. And it was like a 5-yard target. But when people are watching that on TV or watching like Russell Fagan's YouTube video about it, like, oh wow, there's like a blind stage, which is a terrible idea.
Terrible. 100%.
They did it, but it's like, and it was a cool blind stage because like, they straight up blindfold you, take you into a plywood shoot house, put you in a lawn chair while they're giving you a stage briefing that is like, here's the scenario. You've been hunting pirates in the Gulf of Aden. You've been captured because your friends are idiots. And, you like saw the zip ties off on the edge of the chair and then go to work. And I don't even know if you had any of your own guns. It was like, there's a Glock on the table over there. You shoot through there. Hey, there's an AK on a wire spool here. And then at the end of the stage, there's like an M240 or something.
Wow.
I didn't get to shoot that year, but it's like, when you're watching that, you're like, yes, this is something I want to do, because this is like a level of Call of Duty, but in real life, and like before they even beep the timer, they're lighting a string of firecrackers, throwing them on the floor by you. So like, as you're like cutting the zip ties off, there's firecrackers and stuff going off. Like, that sounds cool. If you don't think that's cool, like, I'm sorry.
It's so neat.
There's something a little bit broke about you.
You've been in the shooting sports for so long that you've seen the changes in all of the sports over the years. Like what have you seen like that's kind of like died out and especially multi-gun that you wish would come back, or is it going to ever come back, or can it come back? Stuff like that. How do we do that?
Multi-gun. So at its core, multi-gun, I think 3-gun is still doing well. Things that have changed, and so the things that have changed, for one, I think that this will be, people are going to yell at me probably. I don't really care, not literally. I think that the moment we saw dual loading and quad loading for a shotgun, we should have done something to separate that out. Not to make it go to open or ban it, but the difference between someone who has, let's say, I don't know, an M2 from Terran Tactical, the gun that I shoot, right? It's one of the top line shotguns.
Yeah.
You have to buy a gun like that, or a gun from Hayes or Rose Action Sports or something similar to that, where someone buys a gun. Oftentimes they buy the 3-gun model of a factory shotgun. It still requires modification. It requires specialized equipment. And now you take a TTI M2, pick a gun like that, or a gun that someone bought and took a Dremel to and did the right loading port stuff to. And then you take someone who says, yeah, I want to get into 3-gun.
Yeah.
And they buy the 3-gun model of M2. They buy a 1301 competition model. That gun's got a larger loading port than a standard 1301 or M2. And it still can't be quad loaded or dual loaded. Well, it could be dual loaded, but not really. It's not the same thing. And there should have been something that, stylistically we said, hey, what if we had done something like a modified division?
Yeah, I was going to say
IPSC has a modified division.
Yeah.
Because the prevalence of that, and hey, maybe that would have become the only division anyway, because you have open, where at the time it was split between unreliable box fed shotguns like Sega 12s, which were not reliable. Now we have Vepers and we have better stuff that's a little bit better. And it was back then, like, it was kind of 50-50, or a regular shotgun with, 4-round tech loaded tubes that are about as fast as quad loading, to be quite honest. Like, there's not a whole lot of difference there, especially if you're a real good quad loader. And I would argue that most people are better off learning quad loading than trying to learn how to do the whole stick thing, because I think it's easier to learn the quads. Anyway, I wish that we had done something like that, because I also think that it would have kept shotgun a little bit less. We would not have as high of a shotgun round count if some people were still, as a matter of course, like, why do we have 8-round arrays in USPSA, right? Because someone's still shooting a single stack 1911 and it's sanctioned by the division, like by the rules. You shoot an 8-round gun, you shoot an 8-round open revolver, or 8-round revolver in minor. Nobody cares about 6-round revolver people, because nobody cares about revolver people, because nobody should. Because I still want to make fun of revolver. I'm just kidding. Same thing. If we're looking at matches and we're saying, yes, the base level of my sport in one of the divisions, just like people who aren't me care about, red dot shooters in limited division, and people shooting iron sighted rifles. I actually don't care about that one, put long range out, because I think it's get a scope. So I'm also a hypocrite. But no, if match directors are looking at this, and my base level shooter has an 8-round shotgun and they're loading it 1, 2, 3, 4, not a 12-round shotgun that they're doing that, and now they have 4 shells in the gun. I think that we would probably be a little more friendly to people getting into the sport. And the perception of the game, which is not reality, but the perception of the game would not be that it's all about shotgun reloading. Because I ran one of the bigger 2-gun matches in the U.S. I've helped with the other, probably the most famous 2-gun match in the U.S. is a match called Desert Brutality, In-Range TV YouTube channel. Carl Casarda and Ian McCollum and Russell Fagan made a match, and it's the perception that's there from people who know about 2-gun, from people who shoot rifle matches, people who shoot USPSA, the perception is that 3-gun is largely about reloading a shotgun. And that's because of quad loading and long magazine tube shotguns. Yeah. The fact is that that's not at all true. In fact, the opposite is true. Since quad and dual loading came around, dude, I could take anyone in like a couple hours and get them to functionally dual load a shotgun to where they can, it's not the determining factor on stage anymore.
Right.
When I started, we're loading 4 shells out of a caddy and like, oh, I've got to reload 16 rounds on this stage. That's a deciding factor. It isn't anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of like a reload in production. People think that production's about reloading. It's really not that much about reloading. It's about shooting an iron-sighted pistol in minor power factor.
Yeah, because you're moving eight trigger.
That is, yep. That's one of the things that I think the multi-gun would have been nice if we'd done a little better on controlling.
Yeah.
And still having a place for it, because obviously, it's dominant in shotgun sports and IPSC. Nobody doesn't quad or dual load anymore. In 3-gun, nobody doesn't quad or dual load anymore. But, if we look at shotguns, and if we look at this as something that's supposed to have some martial or military or law enforcement or self-defense relevance, yeah, okay. If I take, like I shot a match with an issued M4 URGI. It's an actual SOCOM issued rifle configuration, and I was second with that gun. Actually, no, I won that match with that gun, just a rifle match, right? Because it's not that bad compared to a 3-gun TAC Ops rifle. Mm-hmm. I'm still using a variable powered optic. I'm still, with a mid-length gas. It's not like terrible. It still shoots good enough groups. I shot a match with the Beretta M9. Actually, the Steel Challenge match I shot with that squadron, I shot with an issued M18 pistol, and I won I won pistol in that match. I was beat by 2 guys with 22s, right? Nice. You can shoot the gun fairly well. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go out and do very well at a 3-gun match, no matter how good you are, with an 870, like with a 870 police, or even with a 1301 tactical. Which is the miserable day. The cool guy, like law enforcement, self-defense shotgun now. If you're not loading it with dual or quad loads, you're not going to have a good time. You're not going to be very competitive. And if the perception is that to play this game, I need to have a 1301 competition with a 12-round magazine tube, people are just going to get turned off by it and say no. It's something that a match, the Southern Colorado SoCo 3-gun tried to address with a patrol division, where I think it was a pump action shotgun with 6 rounds in it. And I don't know whatever happened there. But anyway, that's one of the things I wish we'd still had. And then the other thing, this was actually functionally kind of gone by the time that I started shooting 3-gun. I brought it back a little bit. As I started getting more experience with it, is making the shotgun more than just shoot a bunch of stuff on the ground real fast.
Yes.
So more flying birds, which is it's still a thing. Like the Magpul Governor's Cup that I shot last year.
Yeah.
There were a lot of flying birds in it. That was
Oh yeah.
I mean, there were legit hard sporting clay birds in there.
Yep.
You'll still see that. The clay pigeon toasters, MGM sells them now. They started off in Phoenix with a company called Black Sheep Manufacturing, but those are great, more flying stuff, because that's what shotguns do. There's 2 ways to think about 3-gun, in my opinion. Yeah. Conceptually, there's 2 ways to think about 3-gun. Either 3-gun is supposed to be martial, like it's a military, law enforcement, self-defense based competition. Or it's just there are 3 types of guns in the world. There are rifles, there are pistols, there are shotguns. Muzzle loaders and bows don't count. What an AR-15 is perfectly fine. I mean, in terms of just types of gun, right? An AR-15 is a rifle. I can do all the rifle things, right? I can shoot close stuff really fast. I can shoot really far. I can shoot small. A pistol, I can do the same thing. I can shoot close, fast. I need to do manipulations and reloads and all that stuff. What does a shotgun do? Well, shotguns shoot flying things. Shotguns shoot flying things. The other things that shotguns can do, if you have to, and these are still things that are done around the world, I need to kill deer with this thing, which means I need to shoot slugs. So I need to shoot it far and to the limitation of what slugs can do. We still do that in 3-gun. Buckshot.
Yep.
What matches use buckshot anymore?
I brought them to
Multi-Gun Nationals one year. The last Multi-Gun Nationals, I know they used buckshot there.
I think it was Blue Line 3-gun this year.
Blue Line will use buckshot. Yep, Tobin will put that in. And that's also kind of an extension of Andy Horner. Was the first time I used buckshot in a match was Blue Ridge, because Andy Horner put buckshot in the match, and it was kind of unimpressive the way that it was there, because it was just, you're shooting 12 gauge buckshot, you need to have this many pellets on an IPSC target. Basically, all the pellets have to be on an IPSC target, but there wasn't a lot of that was about it, So I used buckshot in hardest hell multi-gun the last 2 years, I believe. And one of the things that I think IPSC does fairly well is buckshot and slugs are a part of IPSC shotgun. I shot the 2017 Shotgun World Shoot. It was great.
That's my dream to shoot that, by the way, is to go to
What's that?
My dream is to go over and shoot World IPSC shotgun shoot like that. I have to go. I have to figure out a shotgun.
Well, the next time they have one, you can do it. That is you'll probably be able to do that. We can talk about that a little bit too. But one of the things IPSC is very good about and how they handle shotguns, I think they did that well at World Shoot. I only shot 2 IPSC shotgun matches, so I would say that I'm an expert on them, but I did very well in one of them. What I appreciated was there's only one type of ammo on the stage. Mm-hmm. So if there's a field course with buckshot, it's a field course with buckshot. It's 18 rounds of buckshot or whatever it was, and it's hit factor scored because and mostly if all you're shooting is steel with I think there were maybe 20 paper targets in a 30 stage match. So you had paper with slugs and you had paper with buckshot. So functionally, there's no time difference between shooting steel with hit factor or time plus, right? You hit all steel. Congratulations, every steel is 5 points. Here's your hit factor. It's really just time anyway. But then they had hit factor with slugs, right? And the slug shooting wasn't even hard. The hardest thing was like a full IPSC target at 40 yards, which is like the average. Yeah, mostly because we're lazy. And
3-gun. We get 80, 100, and then Fort Benning did 200.
Yeah, or I think Joel Turner called that all the yards. Once.
Yeah, all the yards. Joel.
How many yards is it? All the yards.
All of it.
I put something like that. I had a target at hardest hell that was like 240 yards. It was a bear. It was a bear-sized bear.
Okay.
We called it Sluggy Bear because it shot it with slugs at like 240 yards.
Oh my God.
After you shot your shotgun a bunch, so it was super hot, and nothing was actually hitting where you thought it would.
Yes.
But anyway, not that hard, but it's hit factor, right? So you shoot at Charlie. Well, it doesn't really matter because slugs are a major power factor, obviously. But the buckshot was the same thing, and you're shooting buckshot targets at like 35 yards, and they're separated. So those stages also matter more because there's a limit on round count for IPSC shotgun. I forget what the max round count is. I think it's like 24 or something like that. It's not crazy. I could be wrong about all of this too. I'm not exactly looking at the rule book. But the thing is, okay, well, you can have a 24 round birdshot stage where you shoot 24 targets that are each worth 5 points. Well, a 24 round buckshot stage, you shoot 24 targets, but they score the best 2 hits. Mm-hmm. So instead of being, it's a 240 point stage instead of a 120 point stage. It's double the stage point value.
Yeah.
Which at Shotgun World Shoot, because I put the time in for that match to learn a lot more about buckshot than probably anyone needs to know. I did very well on the buckshot stages. Literally, I picked up 2 places over what was projected for my match finish because I did really well on those buckshot stages. And unfortunately, one of the guys that would have finished above me had a problem on the buckshot stages. So
that's awesome, though. Hell yeah.
Yeah, and I think that worked really well. I try to kind of replicate that. And the challenges you'll see are some of it's just like, you've got to make sure you get good hits with buckshot, and another part of it is you have to not hit a no-shoot with buckshot.
Yeah, I love no-shoots in shotgun 3-gun right now. Like I haven't shot a no-shoot with shotgun in so long. Like I know my gun, I know the pattern. That's so
exactly.
much
And that's
fun
the other part of it, yeah. There was a period, I think it's gotten better now. Unfortunately, I haven't shot a 3-gun match. I don't think I shot a 3-gun match this year. Which is I'm not super happy about, but the work stuff that we do has me running around all the time. I had to back out of 5 major matches this year. So basically the only majors I shot were
2-gun.
They were all 2-gun actually, as it happened, not on purpose necessarily, but I shot Superstition Mountain in 2-gun. I shot the Cobalt Kinetics practical two gun,
Yep.
and then I shot the USPSA two gun where we got to meet in person.
So cool. What do you think actually about like two gun when it was introduced? Were you excited? Were you leery about it? Like, what were your thoughts?
So I've done two gun for a long time, more as a because no one in my club had a shotgun. There had to be an option to shoot two gun, right? Because when I started here in 2008, we had an annual three gun match. So I did run a three gun match here on a regular basis where we do one a month. And really, in a lot of ways, the only way it worked was if there was an option for someone to not use a shotgun.
Yeah. But then two gun concept, I was going to say, is more of like the rifle platform, not so much the PCC. So like when they introduced PCC as two gun and not having that option.
Oh yeah, you meant the USPSA two
gun.
Well,
all of it. So like my questions are twofold actually. Is I have a rifle because I shoot three gun, right? So I would have preferred to do real rifle and pistol. Because I didn't have a PCC. So I had to go out and I had to borrow PCC to shoot two gun nationals. I have to buy one if I want to shoot two gun. And I think it's a little bit, and it's fine, but it's a little bit of a challenge in ROing because I'm very good at ROing multi-gun because that's all I do. But there's a lot that can't differentiate where the 9mm bullets from the rifle or the pistol, or not at all.
Yeah, I don't think anyone thought about that at the USPSA two gun until we're like, hey, what happens if someone does that? And they're like, ooh. Because whatever. So
I was gonna say if the three gunner has a shotgun, but they don't have the PCC, then how now they've got another barrier to shoot two gun.
So USPSA two gun, number one, I thought it was a great match, not just because I won limited, but because I thought it was actually. It's like, oh yeah, it was great because I won. If I'd been like fifth, I'd be like, it was trash. But no, I thought it was great for what it was, and it was clearly designed for people who already shot USPSA. That's it. I don't think it was designed really for multi-gunners because they don't have PCCs unless they shoot like 2x4 in UML, or they already are a USPSA shooter. It was let's do a multi-gun match with things that people in the USPSA already have. And for that, they did an excellent job.
But for the multi-gunners, they let us down by forcing.
I don't want to try to put words in anyone's mouth either, but here we go. Now, I think that what happened there also was USPSA did not run a multi-gun nationals last year. And what they were attempting to do was run a two gun match to satisfy we do multi-gun perception, right? It's not that USPSA wants to get out of multi-gun because they've run a very successful multi-gun match in the past. Much like Steel Challenge, the venue changed away from Vegas where it had been for, I don't know, like 10 years or something like that, under different match directors, but generally a good match. Like moving it away from Vegas and introducing a growing three gun outlaw community to USPSA rules was never really well received by multi-gunners either. Like I don't know if you saw the chamber flags I had in my PCCs, but they're a black flag with black letters, so you have to look hard, and it says flags are dumb. Things like chamber flags. I'm personally not a fan, and multi-gun in general, like USPSA is big about it. USPSA has had to adjust to rifles with PCC, and anyway, USPSA two gun PCC pistol was let's do multi-gun, but really multi-gun for USPSA shooters that already have this. They did a phenomenal job, I think. There's no way around the fact that they're both 9mm. In terms of scoring hits on targets, right? It was time plus scored. And I don't think that was really the right answer, but it was the only legal answer they had, because the USPSA multi-gun rules essentially say that if you're going to do more than one gun, it has to be hit factor. Or I'm sorry, it has to be time plus. It cannot be hit factor. Yeah. In the USPSA multi-gun rulebook, you can run just a rifle match or just a shotgun match, and it can be hit factor, but not if you're combining more than one gun. Reference, when I started shooting three gun, we got there at 7 a.m., left at 6 p.m., and we weren't done because it took forever for a lot of reasons. But one of those was, I need to look at literally every target on the stage for Alpha versus Charlie. So I don't know why they wouldn't want to do just a rifle and pistol. like an actual 5.56 rifle or literally just a 5.56 rifle match.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the board of directors and the USPSA HQ I'm sure they considered that and had some good reason for not doing it.
Yeah.
In terms of two gun in general, I think there are 3 types of two gun. If we're talking about that, just like I don't think you can define multi-gun by any single, like there's, this is this style of multi-gun match. There's too many. Every match that's a major match, I think, in every club is just kind of different, to where I can't really guarantee what you're going to get when you show up.
Yeah.
If I were to tell you something, then you'd show up and it'd be like, oh yeah, by the way, we're the American Confederation of Zombie Shooters or something. And it's like, oh, well, by the way, the only thing that counts are headshots, and we're using nothing but Birchwood Casey, like splatter targets or something, cool. That's awesome. I'd shoot that match. I just, that's a legitimate thing that could happen if you showed up to a local 3-gun. With 2-gun, there's 3 types of matches. There's 3-gun minus the shotgun, which is one way to do 2-gun, or literally like UML has an option for that. If you shoot UML, a club or a match can support a 2-gun division where you just don't shoot a shotgun. Literally the same stage, just don't shoot a shotgun. So you're shooting a lot of optional pistol targets. A lot of shotgun targets shooting a pistol. For a flying clay, they put out a little piece of steel or something different. There is USPSA with a rifle, or IPSC with a rifle. So I would say that USPSA 2-gun obviously falls into that, even though it was PCC and pistol. It was combining 2 USPSA matches, basically. They did a good job with that. Partial targets, they managed to make a time plus match shoot like a hit factor match. They used a lot of the partials, a lot of no shoots, and longer static steel, and they did a good job with that. The third type of 2-gun is one that I don't know if there's not a lot of overlap in the people necessarily, but there is essentially the best way to describe it is the most commonly known as 2-gun action challenge, or like desert brutality, where it is for lack of a better term, it's a tactical 2-gun, where it's the stages aren't stages the way that we would understand stage. The pinnacle stage for desert brutality, for example, is something called the Casarda drill. This shows up pretty much in every one of them. There's a 60-pound kettlebell. It is a rifle stage. Or some variation, like you'll shoot some pistol before this, and then you shoot this part, which is a 60-pound kettlebell. You start at 100 yards. You throw the kettlebell, and when you get to that kettlebell, you shoot the target, put your rifle down, throw the kettlebell again until the kettlebell crosses the 50-yard line. So it is close to, that's probably the most physical stage there, but it is much more of a combination of the shooting side of it is more basic. There's not stages as we perceive them where here's the walls, here's the targets, hit factor. It's like, no, do something hard and then shoot a piece of steel.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I would say 50-50, maybe 60-40 shooting and physicality. And then in its own separate categories of tactical games, which is CrossFit with guns. And that's cool, but that's what it is.
Which is what? CrossFit with guns? Is that what you said?
It's CrossFit with guns. I've seen it in person. And if that's what you're into, cool. It doesn't really look all that. I wouldn't do it, to be quite honest. But that's not to say it's bad. It looks like, the people there were having a great time. Going out and getting to do what they love to do, and they were shooting guns. So it's great, but it's also its own category. And tactical games is pretty different from like 2-gun action challenge, desert brutality. It's something I get asked about, because I've shot
totally different.
I was the range master for that match. I haven't shot tactical games, and it's like, do I really want to do that? And it's like,
can you imagine? I would hurt myself. I'd come out with a broken leg.
You'd probably be okay. I think they are. Well, probably be okay. I think they encourage you to not do anything that's going to get you hurt. I wouldn't register for CrossFit games because it doesn't look like it'd be, what I want to do. And registering for tactical games is kind of more like, if I had a weekend to do that, I would go. If I had a free weekend, I would do what I did this weekend and go shoot a USPSA match or 3-gun or 2-gun.
And have more fun. Way more fun.
That's what I like to do.
So
it's what I like to do. For some people, it's way more fun to throw weights around or carry sleds and stuff like that.
not for me. We never covered this before when you were talking about when was the first AK match introduced kind of to the shooting scene, and then how did you get into like putting on the Red Oktober match?
So Red Oktober was the first. Someone might, I don't think I'm wrong about this, but there might have been something before. But Red Oktober was the first AK shooting match that was a popular thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there were local clubs that would say, yes, we're going to have a rifle match, come out and shoot your AK. But the first thing was specifically, the whole point of this is a large amount of people will get together and shoot AKs and we'll figure out who the best is, was Red Oktober.
Yeah.
At the time, I believe, at the time, basically SUPS, the club that I shoot at, our fundraising was and still is largely for our local efforts, fulfilling the missions of our nonprofit, which is to promote practical shooting in Southern Utah. A lot of the fundraising for that came from, yes, this club is going to put a match on in order to fund everything else that we do, buying targets, buying walls, and that keeps the fees lower here. So like a local match here is $20, which is on the low side. Back then it was even lower, but things cost more now. Everything costs more. So we lined out this major match schedule. That's where things like the Barry Steel Open is an outlaw pistol match. It's like the best pistol match I think that you're going to shoot. It's the most fun for sure. It kind of came out of that, and in cooperation with one of my sponsors and a local awesome company, Barry's Manufacturing, make plated pistol bullets and a lot of other shooting products. But basically the same idea. Hey, let's plan out major events or semi-major, like regional events that people come to, and the revenue from that enables us to do training for the local community for free. It enables us to keep our costs low for the people in the community to come shoot a local match. And I had always kind of wanted to do something for, actually of all things, for like Mosin Nagants, for garbage rods. And a bunch of us had Mosin Nagants, and we talked about like, hey, one day we should just have a little match for all of us to have Mosins, and we'll just shoot all paper and do that. And this is kind of the extension of that idea where I said, hey, we have a calendar date in October. What would be really cool is if we did a Red Oktober AK event. And initially what I thought it would be like, we'll get like 40 or 50 people, and it will have a little thing. It'll be like a day, maybe 2 days, and that's it. Just simple USPSA-ish stages with an AK. And so we promoted that, and then at the time we went to SHOT Show looking for match sponsors for prize table and stuff like that. A lot of matches do that. I don't do that anymore because I don't really run as many matches. But anyway, when I just talked to a few people about it that were my friends, actually the guys from InRange TV were one of them. Another one was a friend of mine that was on the first squad when 10-year-old Brian Nelson shot IDPA, a guy named Ray with him. And like, hey man, we're doing this thing in St. George. We're doing a match for AKs. And a bunch of people, the Carl, Ian, Ray, and other people all said, hey, you need to talk to Jim Fuller, who owns Rifle Dynamics, which then and now, if you're into AKs in the U.S., Rifle Dynamics makes, at the time it was without doubt, without question, the best AK you could buy. I would say even now they're up there, but there's been a lot of growth in AKs now. I'm like, well, yeah, I know about Rifle Dynamics. I'm a gun nerd. I know about AKs. I've seen Jim's videos on YouTube, but I don't know the guy, and I don't want to just like, hey, here's this thing, But every single person was like, oh, well, I know Jim. I'll introduce you. Like, oh. I didn't know it then, but that's the kind of person that Jim Fuller is. He's just, with everybody. He's a super awesome dude. Really, really great guy. So we go to Rifle Dynamics had an open house because they're in Vegas. It's SHOT Show. It's also in Vegas. So they would have an open house. I'm like, yeah, here, we'll go to the open house. I'll introduce you to Jim. Just tell him what you're thinking here. We talk, and so I talked to Jim Fuller a little bit and said, yeah, basically all I really could have possibly asked for from Rifle Dynamics was, essentially, can you make this match legitimate, like to the AK community? Everyone that's into AKs knows that that Jim Fuller is the dude, and that Rifle Dynamics makes the best guns. So if you say that this is cool, then it will immediately become legitimate. And so he thought it was a good idea. It was more than just that right there at the open house, but we talked a little bit more about it later and kind of laid out, hey, what's the vision for this? And essentially, Rifle Dynamics, the first year was the title sponsor. Our sponsorship agreement was a handshake. And the only thing they provided to the match at that time, I didn't ask for anything. Literally, don't give me any guns, don't give me any product. And at the time, I mean, asking for a gun from Rifle Dynamics would have been a big deal. It still is a big deal, but that's when it was a small shop. It was Jim Fuller and a few other people building kick-ass guns with like 3 years of or more to get your gun because there was that much demand for them.
Yeah.
All I want is, can you make this legitimate? So they were the title sponsor. Hey, this is the Rifle Dynamics Red Oktober Collection Cup Championship. I expected 50 people the first year and 120 registered.
That's so cool.
I'm sorry, 120 actually competed. I had actually more than that register. I didn't know that it was a thing. I knew that AKs were a gun. I thought I knew stuff about AKs, but I did not know that there was legitimately a community of AK people, like shooters and people who built like their community and their friend group around shooting AK rifles. It's awesome.
I gotta ask, what how far did like the farthest person whatever come in for that match? Do you know?
I'm actually not sure.
But it wasn't like all local.
The first,
yeah.
No, it wasn't all local at all. I mean, most of the people traveled from somewhere. There was Vegas and Salt Lake, SoCal, but we had people from the East Coast. I mean, I'm trying to think. I know we had some folks from Missouri that were 3-gun shooters. I knew like Corinne Mosier came out for the first year.
Cool.
But I mean, it was immediately like just that. And the thing about Red Oktober every year is at a typical major match, pick one, pick a sport, pick USPSA, IDPA, 3-gun, it doesn't matter. 90% of the people are very experienced in that game, right? They know how everything works. Mm-hmm. It's inverted at Red Oktober. 90% of the people have not, if they do a match, if they have shot matches, it is generally Red Oktober last year or Kalash Bash or another AK event. So that was one of the things that I had to adjust to at Red Oktober, because the first year I designed it for what I thought were pretty simple, match stuff. And it generally was. It wasn't like people were struggling too much with the shooting side of it, but the other part of it was turnaround times and basic etiquette stuff. Like specific things, right? So the first time you show up to a match, they tell you need to help tape, right? And that you need to help reset and stuff like that. Okay. But like, I think if we're being realistic, if we think back to when we very, very first started in the sport, every single time a shooter, like every time the RO called the range clear, you didn't immediately like rush out with tape the way that we do now.
Yeah.
Right. Or if you did, it was because everybody went because everybody knew you had to do that. Mm-hmm. If you've got a squad where one person or 2 to 3 people have shot a match before and the RO says range is clear, we need to tape, people just kind of are like, okay, yeah, whatever. And they're talking. They don't realize that, no. A, this means you. Yep. B, it needs to happen right now. It's not that they're lazy or bad people. They just literally did not know.
Yeah, they've never.
So that was, the match always kind of takes a little bit longer than you expect because it's 90% of the people don't really do this on that regular basis. Yeah. And then the other part of it is, especially the first couple of years, that also led to friction because, what happens if you have people on your squad that aren't taping at a USPSA match, especially if it's at a level 3 USPSA match or a major 3-gun match, right? Well, it doesn't go well because, you kind of like, hey, man, you need to go tape. Hey, you need to stop, being a horrible, terrible human being and an unproductive member of society and go out and tape, right? Well, when you do that to people who've never done this before, they also tend to take offense because some of the people were not as diplomatic as they should have been about it. They just kind of started off by doing what shooters sometimes do, which is they started off by shouting, which was not necessarily well received. Yeah. So that was the main source of friction that I had the first couple of years between actual competitors and people who were not satisfied. Yeah. Essentially unhappy customers. It was not anything necessarily to do with the match side of it. It was more like, yeah, this guy's yelling at me and I'm yelling at him. And it's like, yeah, you guys both need to calm down. It's like, hey, he doesn't know what to do here. By the way, hey, he is right. You do need to help. It's just, I know you don't. First year was about double the size I thought it would be. Some of the friends that I had and coworkers, the first year I wanted to run it, it was met with some resistance from my club for a couple of reasons. The first reason was they didn't think it would be big. I didn't think it would be big either, but we essentially said, well, what else are we going to do? Nothing. So the option is 50 people or nothing.
Right.
So they're like, oh, okay, basically that was, as I remember it, which might be wrong. I've been hit on the head a couple times since then. But then the other source of trepidation that it had was, well, you are insisting the only way you're going to run this match is if you allow bimetal and steel core ammunition, because, well, I don't know if you've ever looked to try to find like 7.62 ammo that won't stick to a magnet.
Yeah.
There's some options. The other AK caliber is 5.45 by 39 millimeter. You know what your options are for non-magnetic ammo for that. There's one. It's Hornady. It's like it was about 40 cents a round back then, so it wasn't that bad. Now it's like Hornady Black. Back then they actually had like 50 round boxes you get in bulk. Now it's like 20 round boxes, and I think it's like, I don't know, like $8-9 a box or something like that. So it's not, if you can find it, it was not a legitimate option. So, well, you can do it, but you can only use paper. I'm like, yeah, I can't do this with only paper. There's no way that it's not interesting. It's not fun.
No.
And it's not, I mean, and if I want to reproduce this, I'd have to use like clay pigeons at 30 yards. I have to reset that. And, it's not going to work. Exactly. So I just said, hey, we have a bunch of steel, because we were open to the public then. We had a bunch of steel from Multigun that, like, it's just, you shoot anything at 50 yards with 5.56 enough, it's going to get chewed up. I was like, we'll just use the stuff that's already broken. Like, we'll see how that goes. And so they said, okay, fine. You can shoot the stuff that's already broken. Like, make sure it's at 50 yards or farther, like nothing at all that's closer, and, I got approval to do it, and I set it up, and we used a lot of steel there. And I did actually ask, I believe, this was the first year of Red Oktober, if I remember correctly. I looked, and I had a stage where I had 50 yards, and I wanted to activate a target. I had it's a target called a winger, actually. It's like a swinger, but it has another axle on it. So a regular swinger goes like this. This one, the target, it goes like that, kind of,
Yeah.
And if you're just listening to this podcast on Spotify, I'm sorry. You basically imagine a swinger with an extra axle on it, and it goes like, it swings like on two different axes, basically. And it sounds simple, but it's a lot harder, especially when it's at like 30 yards and you're shooting an AK. But to activate that target, I just said, man, I really want to activate this with a pepper popper. Like, we're going to have to reset one target at 50 yards. And I just kind of went like, hey, can I destroy one pepper popper? Like, because it's all going to be magnetic, like bimetal, a lot of, especially 5.45 back then. A lot of it was 7N6, so that's essentially a steel core 5.45.
Yeah,
kind of like M855, but not really. But it's a solid steel like slug in the core of the bullet. Like, can I destroy one pepper popper? I'll replace it. Like, we have a few hundred of them. Can I please have one to destroy? At the end of that match, this was what was crazy to me. It looked like we shot a pistol match. It did not look any different.
Good.
That's what I'm looking at. I'm like, so that was when I realized something right there. And I'd always kind of guessed at this, but the magnet test that we used, going back also to things I'd like to see changed in multi-gun and rifle matches. It is very rare to find ammunition that will actually mess up an AR 500 plate. Like, any more so, that will be worse than 55 grain 223.
Right.
I've shot thousands of rounds, and I've witnessed now close to, and this sounds hyperbolic, but it's not. I've witnessed close to 1 million rounds of green tip being shot. And a lot of it was not 1 million rounds on steel plates, but like certainly 500,000 rounds at AR 500 plates. There is no bullet commonly used that's going to like really mess up an AR 500 steel plate.
Yeah.
Because I just shot at 50 yards at the minimum safe distance. I just shot 120 rounds, actually more than that, from everybody. And this target looks new. Mm-hmm. Velocity and actually a couple other nerd factors is really what kills steel. It's not necessarily just velocity, but like green tip specifically, there's other reasons why it's not as bad on steel than M193. But that's like essentially, if you're shooting M193, right, you buy it, it's 55 grains, solid lead core copper jacket. Even at a lower velocity, it's going to do more damage to steel plates than green tip is, than an actual steel penetrator.
So it worked out.
Because that steel, what's that?
I was going to say, so it worked out where You didn't destroy
Yeah.
multiple pepper poppers. Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, that was but the first year I said, hey, we're going to use all our junk targets that are already chewed up, and we don't shoot them with pistol anyway because we get them to frag. They're going to be way down there. Like, if I break them, we're not really out anything. So the first year, I also did a night shoot. That was the first and last time I did a night shoot in that match because I had to throw it out because I was 18 and didn't really know how to do the best possible illumination for them. I had this great idea. I found these click lights at Harbor Freight. They were emergency red LED lights. They were like $8 each or something like that. And I just, oh, cool. I put them at the base of all the targets, and I had spares. I didn't know that much. Like, yeah, it's good. They're going to break. They're from China. They're going to get shot. Whatever. Mm-hmm. And I lit up some targets. We put some flashing red and blue like police lights out. We got burn barrels. It looked really cool. But by the end of that night stage, you couldn't actually see the targets. It was all steel at like 50 yards. Which also looked really cool when you shot them with steel core and bimetal ammo because it sparks like a lot.
Yeah.
So anyway, that first match was a pretty big success, and it's been growing. We run it for 5 years now. The last match we just finished up a couple weeks ago was the biggest one that we've had yet. 324 competitors in a 2-day match with a 2-day early squad schedule. Cool. So we had like 70 people in the early Friday or Thursday and Friday schedule, and then another 200 and some in the Saturday and Sunday.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Neat. Well, yeah, people need to go shoot that. That's on my list for 1 year as soon as I get an AK. I know we're coming towards the end of this, but I really want to ask, how did you make like the Terran Tactical Pro Team? Like, how did you get hooked up with the sponsors that you have? I mean, you obviously started young, but I want to know like how that process came about. It's pretty cool.
I was pretty fortunate. So the first sponsor that I had was Barry's Manufacturing. They're local, and I think I was 14. Oh. And actually, one of the guys that the person that set up sponsorship at Barry's forever is a guy named Jay Phillips. He left Barry's a few years ago, started another company you're probably familiar with. And if you're not, you should check them out. Voodoo Gunworks.
Yeah.
Yep. And
I wanted 22 one day. So
yeah, I have one. It is amazing. It's an incredible gun. It is, I think it is the most accurate 22 repeater that you're going to find. In addition to all the cool stuff about it's a 700 footprint, so it goes in all the chassis and.
Yep.
But anyway, I actually get to work with him now on a daily basis. So he left Barry's, was a co-founder in Voodoo, and then left Voodoo, and now he works for us at Scoring Tech. So I get to work with him every day. And one of the first things I ever did in the gun industry was Jay Phillips thought that 14-year-old Brian Nelson, we should probably give him some bullets way back then. And then it was just meeting people, really. So with Terran, I'd shot with Terran and just kind of knew him. I don't remember if I'd ever actually been to the range at TTI at that point, but I shot with him, squatted with him, went to a movie with him or something. If you squat with Terran, and you'll go to a movie at some point with him. Because he's about that. He trains movie stars. He's really into film. It's cool. So with TTI, actually it started off with I shot a match. I was shooting a Remington Versamax at the time. And I shot the Western Regional we had here in 2014, I believe, from 3 Gun Nation. The gun basically broke bad because it was Remington. Remington, for most of my lifetime, has made guns out of canola oil compressed into gun part shapes, kind of like Kraft American cheese. And it fell apart and eventually just broke. Hopefully they get better with new ownership and all that stuff. But, anyway, literally at that match, I was shooting Superstition the next, in a week and a half after that. This shotgun's not repairable. It's just gone. I don't have any, what I did was basically call him hey man, I need a shotgun. I'll buy a shotgun. I was ready to buy another shotgun anyway, but I don't want to buy another one of these because it broke and I don't think another one's going to be better. Is there any way that I could buy an M2 and have it in time for Superstition? Yeah. He goes, yes. By the way, I'm going to charge you essentially what the M2 costs us, and the base gun. And so sent me a TTI M2 for the cost of, essentially what an M2 Benelli factory gun cost. A little bit less than that because they had a good relationship with Benelli at the time. They were actually buying at dealer cost.
Yeah.
which if you know Benelli as a gun shop, if you're trying to buy Benelli, you have to buy a lot of them to get a dealer price. You can't get them through distributors. So anyway, that was the start of that relationship. And I went and I was, I was second overall and second in TAC ops. And I was literally, I think it was like 0.1% off of being first behind Nils Johnson shooting the same gun. It was like, and I shot the gun great. It was also properly cut out for quad loading, unlike what I had done with my Versamax and tried to do for the first time in a match at Western Regional, and I did not accomplish that.
Yeah,
I was able to actually quad load at Superstition with a proper gun that was set up for it. Gun ran great. I always just kind of had a relationship with Taryn. And so at one point, eventually, he just asked, hey, would you like to be a member of the TTI Pro team a while back? This was like 2016 or 15. And that was the first time I won a match overall in 3-gun, maybe a major match. I won a 3-gun nation. I think it was a Southeastern regional. It was at Universal Shooting Academy in Florida with the blue jersey. It's kind of one of those things that we joke about back then. Back when we had the blue jerseys, the first time you put the blue jersey on, like you win the next major match that you win. It's just, because like 3 or 4 people did that exact same thing. But that's how that relationship started. Almost all the relationships I built for sponsorship in shooting sports were people that I met and shot with. And like, so Taryn Tactical is an example of that. And actually one of them was with Proof Research. Another one of my sponsors was I RO'd with the person that ended up setting up Proof Research's pro shooting team very shortly thereafter. He was a PRS shooter and 3-gun shooter that a guy named Chris Giddings, super good dude. And he was the CRO with me at the Crimson Trace Midnight 3-gun. That's cool. Crimson Trace was the same thing. I was on Crimson Trace had a pro shooting team for a little while back 2014 to 2016, I think it was. Yeah. So just a couple of years. And and they asked a guy named Chuck Anderson. He was the Area 1 director for a while for USPSA. And he shot 3-gun. We shot with him in the Ironman. He'd been to the MGM junior camps and helped out there. Hey, can you put together a pro shooting team? And so he asked myself, a guy named John Browning, who's on the AMU now. He was at the time he was in the Marine Corps. Super good dude also. Nick Atkinson, who I don't know if he shoots many matches anymore, but he's a great shooter. And then myself. That was Chuck, John, Nick, and then myself, the pro team, because I shot with Chuck Anderson a little bit, and then, so Loophole, same thing. I was sponsored by Loophole for a while. And that was basically asked the person that I shot with, hey, again, like 14-year-old Brian Nelson, hey, I think I'm going to buy a Loophole scope, and I'm saving up to buy a Loophole scope. But, I think I'd be honored to shoot, have a Loophole logo on my jersey and use a Loophole scope if that's something that you're interested in. And so that worked out.
What's the coolest thing like ever done in the industry? I gotta know.
So one of the coolest thing I've ever done in the industry, that's a tough one because I've done a lot of cool things. I've been very lucky, but the most satisfying and cool thing I think I've done has been the stuff that the training I provided for military units and for military units in general, and for some of the law enforcement agencies. That's been lately. So my day job now is providing scoring for those same agencies. And it's literally actually the coolest thing, if you were to think of it, like impact and what it means for the future of the industry is exactly what I'm doing now, where I'm taking a scoring software and I'm enabling the United States Marine Corps to use hit factor scoring for companies of Marines. Like basically every time a company of Marines goes to the range, that's a major USPSA or 3-gun match. So what we're going to do at School of Infantry next week is helping to score a hit factor based standard and help with their training on a hit factor based standard, just supporting with timers and some of the stuff we're doing for 240 people. And essentially now, if you're a Marine going through the School of Infantry, either on the West Coast or the East Coast, in the pilot program for the Infantry Marine Corps, so new training procedures at School of Infantry, you are going to be measured on marksmanship using a hit factor standard. It's the first time that's ever been done at scale in the military.
I like it.
So that's, honestly, not even necessarily training. I also have done training for the School of Infantry combat instructors, helping with the Marine Corps program. But the coolest thing was literally watching dozens of SOI, School of Infantry combat instructors, scoring with an electronic tablet using an acoustic shot timer, like an AMG Bluetooth shot timer, and scoring a bunch of new Marine Corps privates on drills that are essentially, based on speed and accuracy.
Yeah.
That like watching that happen and then doing this like you would do for Practiscore, syncing the tablets together and having all the scores for them. It's like, it was really satisfying. So that's probably, it doesn't sound like much. It's not like I'm hanging on the side of a helicopter shooting a machine gun or anything. But that was probably one of the coolest things I've seen.
I think it's huge because if you think about that, that's leaving a legacy for what you've done for the sport, and then they can take it and keep going. That's a big deal in our industry. So people that are listening to this that shoot, they get that. That's a big deal.
So it's probably the coolest thing I've done.
Have you met
I got to shoot other than that, I got to shoot a Sturmgewehr under night vision on a stage at Red Oktober. That was also pretty cool.
You're just a kid.
Just because it's like, I'm shooting an STG-44, like the world's first real assault rifle under night vision. I can't see anything, but still
cool.
On a stage. That's also pretty cool.
That's awesome. Have you met any famous actors or anything like when you were at the TTI range or anything like that?
Not that I'm allowed to talk about. There was one that I wasn't really supposed to meet. We were under it was weird there, but anyway, cool guy. For training, I've worked with some TV actors and some producers and stuff. That's been nice too. It is actually like all the people that I've met at TTI in terms of training for non-gun industry people. I don't do it a lot. It's just when you're there, if you know how to teach, trying to be like, hey, can you help with this class? Because I actually have 18 things to do, and I'd love to teach these people, but I also this makes it so I have to do 17 things right now.
Yeah. That's cool.
They've all been fantastic to work with, actually, just nice people. So
that's neat. One of my last questions too I want to ask is going back to the sponsors that support our shooting sports. What are some things that shooters and people that really support the Second Amendment can do better to help the sponsors that give back to us?
That's a good question. So in terms of helping, one is it's not against the law to actually just give them money and buy things rather than rely on winning it off a prize table or asking for a discount. In addition to which, say thank you to a sponsor, of course. But even beyond that, try to be helpful to a sponsor in terms of making the best thing you can do if you want to be involved in shooting sports or the shooting industry. If you want to make all of the dollars as a shooting industry company, solve the problem in the best way possible. That's the best way to succeed. There are many companies that do that and sponsor matches. And unfortunately, there are also sponsors in the shooting sports that do a lot of sponsorship, but I wouldn't use what they make.
Yeah.
The best thing that you can do when I talk to a sponsor at a match, if there's a vendor there or something like that, is, I appreciate that you donated to the match and helped to make it happen. And what sponsorship is a recognition for the most part, because I sponsored matches as for Scoring Tech. And then before that, when I worked for Tactical Performance Center, we would give certificates to matches because we think that competitive shooting is good.
Yeah.
And that's about it. The return on investment is not something I think you can really necessarily quantify for sponsorship. For us, it was a little bit different because we're giving away a certificate to a training class that's going to happen either way. So if I have one person on a certificate in a training class that's there for free, well, unless it tilts the balance of how many instructors I needed to have at a class, it really didn't cost us actually anything. Functionally nothing. I need to give them 30 more 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. That's $2 or something. because the instructors are already going to be there. We're already going to be doing the class. Yeah, come and do it in terms of support. But it's because I believe, as a sponsor, I believe in what's happening.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. So just say thanks and that you appreciate it. That's all that's what we really wanted at TPC is, we think that this is worth supporting. Therefore, yeah, we'll just put this out here. We think it's good marketing because, it doesn't really functionally cost us anything. It still provides a massive amount of value. It's not like I'm giving, a $500 gift certificate towards a $3,500 gun, which is another thing I've seen. One particular, no longer sponsor of anything, used to do that. But that's all that we were really, in it for. Yeah, it was good marketing kind of for us because it didn't cost us anything. It provided value for a shooter. But the main reason we did it was because we actually believed in competitive shooting. It was something that we just wanted to be supportive of. So, whether that came with a slot into the match, whether that came with banner placement, that was all great. But we were just happy to be involved with it.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if that's most sponsors. I kind of think that in the sponsors that I know that I've talked to, like my personal sponsors, when they sponsor an event, that's generally what they're looking at as well as to whether or not they're going to sponsor it again. It's whether or not they're still satisfied with competitive shooting. It's not necessarily that they're making dollars out of it. It's usually, other than major corporations, it's not just a like dollars and cents. Hey, we don't think this is worth doing anymore. Cross it off the list. It's the individual people behind that company that make it, because a lot of these companies, just like the ones you and I work with, are not major corporations. It's a person that's in charge of that, or a couple or three people.
Yep.
And they're making that decision because they believe in what you're doing. So simply enjoy the match, be a good competitor, and then just say thanks. And then beyond which, if you actually have something that's productive to offer, help. Like I've helped with product redesign stuff just because it's like, hey, I saw this, I really like this, but this could be different in this way. And that would be, kind of more what we're looking for.
Right. That's cool.
So,
good words. So what's next? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, and unfortunately, I will say I'm not the best person to ask about the sponsor relationship stuff either. I should have probably led with that.
Like it. Yeah, one of my final questions here, and then you can leave your final thoughts, is what's next for Brian Nelson?
So I am going to try and shoot more competitively next year. We're at work right now with Scoring Tech. We're in a phase where we're very busy. I've been back and forth to the East Coast now. I drove 4 times. I'm going back and flying a 5th time this year. So what's next? I'm going to continue. Like my day job is actually very, very cool. But as things hopefully get more calm, I'm going to try to shoot more matches, and that's going to be a focus primarily on rifle. Whatever I can. So that's things like, I wish we just had rifle matches in the U.S. There's going to be a couple that I know of. I don't know if they want me to announce those yet, but one of the things for me that was very dissatisfying in my shooting sports adventures was shooting a rifle world shoot actually both of the times I've been to rifle world shoot. I went for the first one in Russia in 2017, which was awesome in terms of an experience. Like I was 19 or 20 years old or something like that. Going to Russia with 2 AR-15s is like, okay, like, this is not something I think most people would have thought would have happened in, the world. But I didn't shoot. That's where I learned that it was hard. Like stick rifle is hard compared to what we do. And it's hard because it is exactly in the middle of what 3-gun is. 3-gun is either really hard because we're shooting 8-inch targets at 400 yards, and it's basically like a light PRS type match with unlimited bullets, or it's a big piece of paper out to like 20 yards because nobody wants to walk further than that to tape it. And we don't use a lot of no shoots. We don't make it very technical. IPSC Rifle World Shoot 2017 was exactly in the middle. Like the closest target was maybe 20 yards. It had a bunch of no shoots on it. There was no place to shoot on the move. It was very fine position. Stick that position, minor power factor, really low hit factor stages. Therefore, accuracy mattered a lot. And then I went to Sweden in 2019. Again, also really awesome experience. And I thought that I had learned a lot since 2017. 2017, I went and didn't do as well as I had anticipated I would. Still not bad. It was like 80% or something, which I'm not unhappy with. And then thought that I'd learned a lot about shooting, about rifles, about, technique in Sweden, and went kind of shot iffy and had to take my gun apart on the stage because it jammed that bad. Like I'm cracking the gun shotgun style, like pulling futzing with a trigger that went bad. So yeah, I'm literally taking a Sears spring and detent for an AR Gold trigger and putting it back into the housing and then fixing the disconnector. It's something that apparently they actually fixed, but I didn't know about in that particular trigger. And it may have been some weird adjustment that I wasn't aware of. But
fun.
Anyway, that was dissatisfying. So a lot of what I've done in the last couple of years since then has been technically getting better at rifle shooting. That's fundamentals. Like, I shoot bullseye targets offhand at 100 yards from my 3-gun stance now. I'm better at understanding zeroing a gun. So the next thing I'd like to do is actually, the last couple of years have been very heavy on getting more technically proficient and sound with rifle shooting in the same way that someone would do with pistol shooting for USPSA. It's not something that really existed here for many people in 3-gun. And the ones who did do it would be people like Daniel Horner and Jerry Michalek and Greg Jordan, Bruce Pyatt, and a few others. But for the most part, it wasn't something. It's not something you can read about either. There's not a lot of guidance in that regard, unfortunately. So what's next for Brian Nelson in terms of competitive shooting is hopefully a lot more like that. And I'm very frustrated with IPSC because they haven't scheduled another Rifle World shoot at all.
I know.
And they've scheduled a pistol and shotgun world shoot, and they keep pushing it back because of coronavirus stuff, which is, so I hope I get to shoot a rifle world shoot before I'm 30. We may or may not be able to. If I can, what I'm going to try to do, I've got a little plan going with some other great dudes, some of the guys from the last world shoot team and some friends that haven't shot IPSC yet. We're going to try to go this summer to shoot a major IPSC rifle match in Scandinavia somewhere.
Cool.
Or in the Baltics. We're talking a little bit about Estonia, but I don't know what the COVID restrictions are going to be like, or Finland, someplace like that, which is also, it's also a cool place to travel.
Yeah, hell yeah. This is awesome. Shooting sports can take you in all different places, so I love it. Any final thoughts you want to leave people with?
In terms of final thoughts, man, there's not a lot of substitute for going out, practicing and training, and actually spending ammo. So dry fire is great, and you should do it. What I've seen is a lot of people trying to find a better solution for dry fire with airsoft, with laser, and stuff like that. Those are all great. But when it comes to learning how to shoot, there are very few substitutions for going out and doing a fundamentals heavy 200 round range session. Just very hard to do right now. I get that. But don't be afraid to go out and shoot. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And if you haven't gone out to compete in a match, don't be afraid to go out and do that either. There's no substitute for going out and getting better at shooting. There's no substitute for going out and actually getting to shoot a match. If you haven't done that yet, you're not going to be ready. Accept that. Go out and do it. It doesn't matter. Nobody was ready for their first one. It's kind of impossible to explain to someone who's never done it, how shooting something as simple as a USPSA or IDPA match works. If you have all the stuff to go out and do it, find the place, find the time to be there, go and do it. If you don't have all the stuff to go out and do it, like a 3-gun match especially, you probably don't buy it. Ask someone if you can go do it. If you can borrow some gear, give them ammo, buy them lunch, and go out and do it. If you've ever wanted to, there's no substitute for going out to do it.
Love it. I like that. That's 100% accurate. If you're not ready until you've already shot a match.
Yep.
You're never going to be ready for the first one.
And if you read about it, even in really good sources, if you listen to, a good like Red Oktober podcast about it, if you're reading the USPSA magazine, if you're reading American Handgunner or Guns and Ammo about USPSA, you're still just not quite going to get it. Don't buy anything. Don't expect that you know what's going on. Go out, be humble, be nice. Shooters are some of the most welcoming and friendly people that you meet. Go out and do it. Yeah, exactly that.
Love it. Well, Brian, how can people find you on social media? And do you have your own website for training or anything like that?
I do. So I don't really do much, kind of the same reason I haven't shot a lot of matches. I don't really do a lot of training. outside of stuff that I actually get committed to for work. But if you're looking for me, the best place to keep up with my thoughts on shooting, whether they're smart or not, they're going to be on my Instagram page. It's just Brian Nelson, Practical Shooter, with a lot of underscores in between each word because I was bad at picking a username. And then I do have a website that has some resources on there. I do have a blog that's not really used. I'd like to use that a little bit more, but I have target resources also. So if you want to print out practice targets, there's some stuff that I use there. You print out on 8.5 by 11 paper. It's good for taking to the range. That's briannelsonshooter.com. And if you're looking for good training, I don't work there. I'm probably not going to be teaching a class, but if you're looking for good training, my old place of work, Tactical Performance Center, a really awesome dude named Rossen Christov runs that company. He's the director of training and the owner of it now. That's some of the best pistol training you're going to get is a handgun mastery course from Tactical Performance Center. So if you're looking for training and things like that, that's where I recommend you go. There's a lot of good instructors out there also. A lot of them are friends of mine. But that's the other place I would recommend to get training.
Love it. Yeah. And just move to Utah if you're listening to this, if you want to shoot, because that's the hotbed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's another thing. There's very few places that I can think of off the top of my head that you can shoot at that are as good as St. George, Utah. Now, if you're moving in and you're going to shoot, that's cool. We are tired of people from California and
New York for us. Yeah.
Crazy places coming in here and clogging up our traffic. And but if you're going to shoot, it's okay. If you ain't going to go out and shoot guns in matches, then you can stay where you are. That's fine. Access to a range is huge though. Like that's another, if you're going to track it back to what great shooters had for the most part was a place where they could go shoot.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's also people to shoot against, but it's a place where you can easily go and shoot. Like that's actually something that probably the biggest thing that shooting sports could work to improve overall is access to a place to shoot and do what we do to run a match, but then also for people to get good at it. Because at least in USPSA, there's a little bit of a charter to it's not just for people to go out and shoot because it's fun. There's, the implication that people should be doing this, trying to get better.
Yep. Yeah.
Hard to get better if you only ever shooting a match and don't have a place to practice.
Yeah. It sucks. I'm in the boat trying to find property, but you're 100%. Yep. So
out here, at least, well, we have an awesome range, but a lot of the West, at least you can go out in the desert, but East Coast, that's a little bit less.
Yeah. Well, Brian, thank you for joining.
Yeah.
This has been a blast and I'm excited to see you somewhere, I'm sure, in 2022.
Yeah. Yeah. I sure hope so. Are you going to come out to, what's that?
Will you be at SHOT Show?
I will be at SHOT Show, yeah. If I'm not at SHOT Show itself, if they decide to be silly about COVID requirements and masking and stuff, I won't go into the show, but it's like a 90 minutes drive. I'll be there. Yes. Yeah. Probably. Best part of SHOT Show is not on the show floor. The best part of SHOT Show is all your friends being together in Vegas. And I hope that they run a match afterwards. They usually do run one at Pro Gun Club for either a USSL or a USPSA match. That's really the highlight of SHOT Show.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't go to the show. If you just go to the match, you're going to beat everybody because they're all tired from being on the show floor.
That's so true. Yep. Love it. All right. Thanks again.
I'll be there and then, yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
My pleasure.
It's been awesome.
Having me. No, that's all right.
We've got internet lag problems.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening to the Red Oktober podcast and stay tuned for the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Red Oktober podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Follow along on social media at Red Oktober or 3 Gun Kenzie.